Ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming today. This is in my life, this is one of the most interesting, fun activities that I have. Getting to see all of you from all of your different constituencies is really neat. I think you know most of each other, and we'll have time towards the end of our meeting to talk about what's going on from each of your areas. But today we've got an interesting agenda, some things that I learned in just talking with Alana about it. Oh, she told me what I should say. But yeah. I know that we've got the majority of the folks, so will you take the roll? Yeah, take the
Yeah.
attendance.
Okay, so
please.
I'm gonna just say an organization's name, and if you just want to speak up, tell me your name. Just go online, share and meet yourself and let me know, and I only need one representative per organization. Okay, Audubon, Florida,
Park Patrol.
Friends of the Hillsborough River. Sierra Club. Tampa Bay Conservancy. Tampa Bay Waterkeeper.
Justin Tramble.
And Tampa Bay Watch. Joe Island Slams.
DJ Strut.
Black and Beach.
Coach Chilton.
Gulfstream Natural Gas. Tampa Bay Pilots Association.
Terry Flip.
Mosaic. Tampa Electric Company.
Amy Butler.
UF IFAS and Florida Sea Grant.
Angela Collins.
Megan, do you mind turning up the volume a bit? USF. Eckerd. Hillsborough County elected. Hillsborough County staff.
David Blitzberg.
Manatee County staff. Alyssa Powers. Pasco County elected.
Yeah, proxy for Commissioner Scano.
Okay, Pasco County staff.
Melissa Charbonneau.
Pinellas County staff.
Asha DeCrell.
Hernando County staff. Carla.
Carla Berman.
Caroline, welcome. Citrus County staff.
Hey, good morning, James Toy.
Welcome. Port Tampa Bay. Port of St. Petersburg.
Dave Worth.
Seaport Manatee. City of St. Petersburg.
Whitney Blair.
Whitney, City of Tampa.
This is Heather Maggio.
City of Clearwater.
Sarah Kessler. And Emily Davis.
Chair here and Vice Chair.
Libra.
Thank you. Army Corps of Engineers.
This is Aubrey Hirschhorn.
Oh, thanks, Audrey. The Natural Resources Conservation Service. Camila Colo. Thanks, Camila. Welcome. Noah.
Mark Schramek.
Thanks, Mark. Florida Department of Environmental Protection.
Melissa Madden.
The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Amelia Misavage. Amelia. Florida Department of Transportation. Southwest Florida Water Management District. Sure. Okay. Hillsborough County at large. And Pinellas County at large.
George Henderson.
Thanks, George. Join the square. Environmental Protection Commission of Hillsborough County.
Chris Pratt.
Hillsborough County City County Planning Commission.
Sean College.
Tampa Bay Estuary Program.
It's really.
US Fish and Wildlife Service. McDill. Okay, Sarasota Bay Estuary Program,
Jay Leveroni, alternate.
and Tampa Bay Water.
Graham Bartlett.
All right, Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
This is Sally Thompson, Tampa Bay Conservancy. I was on mute when when you called me before. Sorry.
Ally, gotcha.
Is there anyone else we might have missed?
Tom Barnhart, City of Seminole, sitting in.
Thanks, Tom.
I'm Phil Compton with Friends of the Hillsborough River, also representing Tampa Bay Sierra Club.
Glad you're with us.
I'm Mary Keith, representing Tampa Audubon.
Good. Anybody else? Want to
Brendan
recognize,
Myers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
say that again, please. Did you get it?
Brendan Myers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, standing in for Tiffany Lane.
Thank you, Brendan.
Sarah Vitale with the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. Morning.
Who's acting as our director?
Yeah, filling in for Ren Carl, our executive director.
All right,
Now we got it,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Do we have anybody from the public that would like to be recognized? Okay, seeing none, then I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the meeting of March 14th.
sorry, did someone just,
Say your name, please.
Kim Cruz.
I think that was a mistake.
I might have.
Okay,
So moved.
Second.
thank you. There's a motion second to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries. We're gonna have a quick update, but there's nothing really to update because we haven't had any meetings recently. But we do have two committees that are in addition to this group, and that is the Natural Resources Committee and the Environmental Impact Review Committee. So if you have any issues that might be germane to that, let Alana know so that this committee can look at it and offer some suggestions and bring it back to the group if necessary.
Quick
Go
correction.
ahead.
So actually, the Natural Resources and Environmental Impact Review Committee is one, it's a very long name for that committee, but that is one, and our other one is the Legislative Review Committee.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, this legislature might want to get their hand on something. All right, at the last meeting that we had, we talked about updating our operating procedures. And there have been several suggestions that have been made. I'm gonna ask our attorney, Don, if you will go over that with us.
Sure, thank you
Please.
very much. I did have the pleasure of sitting in on your last meeting, and it was a good discussion of operating procedures and some revisions to those procedures. In your packet, you have a version of those revisions that has yellow highlights, and I'll be referring to the version that has yellow highlights. The highlights are intended to bring your attention to the changes for the current operating procedures. And it's my effort to try to incorporate the discussion that we had at the last meeting. As reflected in the minutes that you just approved, at the last meeting, there was what was favored was a hybrid approach to the meeting procedures and decision-making. By hybrid, there was a discussion of more formalized Robert's Rules approach or a very informal consensus approach that wouldn't have formal guidance or formal procedures. But the group last meeting favored a hybrid of those two approaches. So that's what I've tried to do in the version that you have in front of you. You see up on the screen, we'll go through. I won't highlight every change, but I'm certainly open to any discussion on any of the changes, but I'll try to focus in on the major changes. First being the fact that we are not going to be following strictly Robert's Rules. We're striking that reference out of the procedures, but they are guidance, and they're referenced as guidance as opposed to us following them strictly. You'll see there under meetings that we've changed the terminology from emergency meetings to special meetings. The reason is we don't necessarily have to have an emergency to have a special meeting. This group does not meet that frequently, and so there may be in the interim a need to have a special meeting without it being necessarily an emergency meeting, but this would still give you that opportunity to have a meeting in between your regularly scheduled meetings. And then under the notice provision, bringing the agency into the modern day where the web page is more and more relied upon for notice. Referencing that in addition to mail, web page notice will be given. With regard to agendas, a little bit of flexibility here that would allow the chair or the staff to set the agenda. Obviously, staff would be consulting with the chair, but the chair may be busy doing other things and not actually be able to physically set the agenda, so staff would be assisting in that regard.
I have a quick question actually about the regular meetings. And posting on the webpage, is this and mail to each member? Is it okay if it's an email and not?
Oh, sure.
Okay, I don't have to physically mail
Yeah,
you all.
nowadays mail is not necessarily regular United States mail.
Okay,
It is email, and that's perfectly permissible. On the second page, if we go to the second page, again, if there's a need to place something on the agenda, if a member of this body would like to place something, it's simply a matter of letting the chair know or the staff know, and it can be added to the agenda. Ultimately, it's the chair's decision as to what the agenda will be, but certainly permissible for individuals to bring to the chair's attention the need to discuss certain items.
Mr. Kine, could I? jump in?
Yes.
Yeah, no later than 15 days finishing that statement, is that, you think that's really necessary?
Well, we can certainly change that to a lesser amount. There has to be some, it can't be at the last minute, obviously.
Well, I'm thinking that that is a deadline for when someone can request it. That's not necessarily has to be approved by the chair or staff.
That's exactly right. It is to request. The chair will ultimately make the decision subsequent to that 15-day period and publish the agenda. But we can come back to that if there's a.
I'm just thinking, I don't know that we need a deadline for someone to request it. Leave it up to the chair or staff whether it's important enough to go on the agenda. That's just my thought.
Okay. And again, we can certainly revise this. I want to make it clear, I have no pride of authorship in this revision. So it's perfectly welcome that we have comments and we have further revisions. Obviously, these are your procedures and you need to be comfortable with them. Let's move on to the provision on the second page about special meetings. If you're gonna have a special meeting, what we're trying to avoid here is that it morph into a general meeting. It needs to focus on the special need for the meeting. The topic or topics that were announced as the purpose of the special meeting. So that's what's intended there. And an agenda may be prepared to assist in the orderly discussion. That's permissive for a special meeting. May be prepared but it would certainly assist in the discussion. Going on to the place of meetings, of course, reference is still to this location, but the virtual meeting option is recognized in the procedures. More and more agencies are going to this as an alternative. There would be a necessity of 1/3 of the membership being physically present. But if that was to be accomplished, then you could do a virtual meeting as much as we're doing now, but it recognizes it in the procedures. There is not a quorum provision in your current procedures. Obviously, we generally follow the 51% rule. This codifies that. This spells it out that to have a quorum, we need 51%. But 1/3 of the membership needs to be physically present. So 1/3 present, you could have enough on the virtual connection that you would have 51%. Probably the most significant edit and the most significant suggestion begins at the bottom of page 2 with subsection D. This is an attempt to recognize the hybrid approach between consensus and the need to take a vote on issues. Well, this language says that the chair will always attempt to achieve consensus on motions and actions that are being discussed. And if in the opinion of the chair, consensus is achieved, the chair may declare that the motion or action has been approved. Now, if in the opinion of the chair, consensus is not achieved, the chair may either declare that the motion is not approved or may call for a vote on the motion or action under consideration. And in that instance, if it's been the opinion of the chair that it did not pass, but someone has asked by way of motion that there be a vote, and the chair has agreed to have a vote, the action would have to be affirmed by 2/3 vote. This is an attempt to implement another provision of the minutes that you just approved, where at the last meeting, the members were in favor of a higher threshold of support when voting. Otherwise, should operate by consensus. So if you have to have a vote on a particular matter that's up for discussion and doesn't appear to be consensus, then there'd be a larger number of folks who would have to vote in support. Again, so open to discussion.
Yeah, I just have a quick question to ask you for clarification. Because this group is supposed to make specific recommendations to the Regional Planning Council, I wonder if maybe a little more emphasis needs to be made to that fact. Because they may come back and say, well, you all sort of agree, but sort of what did you do? So perhaps that could be a little more clarification.
And you're absolutely right. This body makes recommendations to the Regional Planning Council. When it goes to the Planning Council, it's helpful for the Planning Council to know that there was substantial support for whatever's being recommended. What the approach the draft takes is that the chair would make that determination initially. But if it's unclear, it would go to a vote, and you have a 2/3 requirement. But we can certainly,
Can we discuss that?
of course.
a bit more? I think 2/3 feels kind of high, especially because if we're making policy recommendations, you know, that's all it is a recommendation. It's good to have healthy debate. If it's a little tighter, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But because then the planning council will make the final decision. It's not like we're having to put something in stone. So 2/3 seems like a high threshold to me, but that's just my personal thought.
Probably leaving a lot up to the chair to make that determination. Because as long as I'm here, at least for the rest of this year, I don't want to have to start counting, well,
Correct,
one vote shorted of 3/4 or whatever.
correct. It just
But
seems,
I think the general intent by you and some of the others that suggested that we look at this was to encourage more participation from all of you.
And I think the point of this is if we're not comfortable getting behind an idea or whatever, if we're split 52 to 50, we're not gonna suggest to the Regional Planning Council that this board approve something. We may say we couldn't come to an agreement on this, which is fine, because we're like an advisory role to the region.
so would we still be able to talk about a discussion even if it fell short? Could the chair decide to, you know, discuss that at the planning council?
Absolutely, and what could be brought to the council would be people's concerns or the folks that, you know, people that thought there were some good assets or whatever it is, that would be brought, but a support from the Agency on Bay and Coastal Management would be only reserved for things that are, you know, a pretty strong majority. Was it 2/3? 2/3 or unanimous as a consensus.
Right, thank you.
That being the goal, consensus is kind of the goal. Yeah.
Absolutely, it should always be.
Don? Or is
Yeah.
there someone else? Yes.
Just answered my question, but I was gonna ask how we define, how in council's view is consensus defined? Is it unanimity?
Well, as drafted, it is, in the opinion of the chair, that based on the discussion, there is consensus. It's not unanimity, it's consensus. That is, a substantial majority of those who are discussing an issue. Now, we're not getting into, is that 65%, 68%? It's in the opinion of the chair, there's a substantial majority that favor the action that's being proposed.
And this chair will probably ask for a vote.
That's perfectly okay.
Yeah, it's a good distinction that, chairs and everybody should recognize that consensus, as you say, would be a substantial majority in the interpretation of the chair. I think that's reasonable. That's how I understand consensus as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think it's important to recognize that part of that consensus building is that we've agreed, the people who aren't in full agreement or unanimity, agree to not, obstruct further progress. In other words, they stand aside from the decision, and allow the consensus of the group to go forward. And if you can't reach that, the chairperson says, I think we have consensus. Any one person can say, I'm sorry, I really disagree. And if that person says that, then you were pushed into the supermajority of a vote. I think that's a clear understanding of how.
Well, that's
consensus
probably
should
one of
and
the
hopefully
values.
work.
It's probably one of the values of having structure too. You need to, there's some people who don't like to, they have very good opinions and everybody's opinion matters. And I think that's part of what you're saying and what everyone else is saying. And that's one of the values, I think, of having a structure and doing a combination instead of just saying, well, y'all agree or not, have something that's a little defined. But at the same time, don't just do things that you were mentioning, Woody, like, there's that close. Maybe it's something we need to read.
Yeah, and to your point, if you have a strong opposition to something that seems to get a lot of support, I think we want to hear about that. Because you may have information that the rest of us don't have. I'm not saying you, anybody might have information that the rest of us really don't have. And so even if, during the discussion, you feel, okay, I'm largely outnumbered here. It's still important that you bring your points forward because it may change our perspective on things and change our advice to the regional.
I think any of this matters.
And of course, that is the intent of the language that I brought before you, that what's being discussed is the way you would operate by consensus. But if not, if there's a dispute about that, if there's a disagreement about that, you can call for a vote. So, but let me move on to the next couple of provisions. But that is I think, the most significant provision. We can certainly come back to that. The next issue is subsection E, which is important to recognize that no decision by the agency or any committee is binding on your organization. So when you come here, yes, you represent an organization and you speak, for yourself as well as your organization, but the action taken here doesn't bind the organization. I think that's an important point. Hopefully gives you all some comfort as you go back home and explain what happened. The next provision on records is simply, we're covered by public records. Meetings have to be recorded and recording shall be preserved by staff and minutes are kept. And in terms of attendance, can either be again by in person or online. As we're doing now, we record those who are online and have a record of attendance. Moving on to the third page is where we recognize the committees that were referenced earlier. There's going to be a legislative review committee and a natural resources environmental impact review committee. But you'll see in 3.1 another committee that's being referenced, and this is an executive steering committee, which, as drafted, would be allowed to act on behalf of the agency when a quorum of the agency is not available. This is similar to the way the Regional Planning Council operates. that if they cannot get a quorum, but there's a quorum of the executive committee, then they can act on behalf of the Regional Planning Council. The draft names the committee as consisting of the chair, the vice chair, the standing committee chairs, and 5 other at-large members of the agency appointed by the chair for geographic balance. So again, that's just a suggestion to help the agency conduct its business and do those things that the agency feels need to be done in a timely manner. Perhaps not a special meeting, but an executive committee meeting. And the last item that I'll reference is the very last revision of operating procedures. Once adopted, if further changes needed to be made, that would require a 2/3 affirmative vote. I don't think you want the procedures to be changed very frequently, but when there's a need, certainly by 2/3 vote, they should be changed. So that is a walkthrough of the changes. Again, I am totally open and I welcome comments, discussions, after which we'll hopefully put this into a final form, circulated among the membership of this body and recommended to the Regional Planning Council.
Okay, does anyone have any questions or would like to be recognized, sir?
Yes, this was probably discussed earlier, and I was just wondering on 3.0, the reason for the elimination of the public information and the habitat restoration committees.
That was something that I have to defer to Alana about, because that was a change that was made even before the last meetings.
Yeah, those committees haven't been meeting for years now, as far as I know, and I know the estuary program now has their own restoration committee and public information committee. I think it was just seen as it's not really relevant, and so we can kind of conduct that, I think, through the full agency or through one of those other committees.
Oh, fine. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Yes.
I have a comment for 2.4 place. If I can remember correctly, I think this committee met fully virtually during these COVID years. So I was wondering if we need to include the addition of, if we ever end up in that situation again, or hopefully this building never, is out of operation from a hurricane, that we could meet fully virtually, because right now it just says if at least 1/3 is physically present.
What happened with regard to hurricanes as well as COVID is the governor issued an executive order that allowed agencies to meet virtually without any requirement for physical presence. And so I would anticipate if there's a hurricane, we'll be having executive orders that might give some flexibility to that. Currently, the law does require for virtual meetings that 1/3 be present.
And then also, it does have, says that we should be meeting here, but we could meet elsewhere at the agency chair's discretion. So if for some reason this building is not operational and we want to meet somewhere else, then.
Does that answer your question? Anybody else? All right.
I have a question about the 3.1, the executive steering committee. I didn't understand are they gonna meet outside of normal or regular meetings and special meetings, or is it they'll make decisions where there's a regular meeting or a special meeting and they're in attendance, but that we don't have a quorum with the general membership, so.
Yeah, if I could respond to that as to how the Regional Planning Council handles this. There would be a regularly scheduled meeting that has been noticed, but a quorum does not, the full body does not attend. But there is a quorum of the executive committee. Then under that circumstance, at a regularly scheduled meeting, for which there was not a quorum of the full body, but there is of the executive committee could act. That's how the Regional Planning Council handles it. That's not to say you couldn't handle it differently. That would be the way that I would interpret it as drafted.
So there won't be additional meetings just for the executive steering committee where they can make decision outside of the membership.
Again, that's your decision to make. If you want to change to allow that, we can certainly do that. I'm just simply saying that the model that I've tried to follow is the Regional Planning Council where there would not be another meeting. It would be a regularly scheduled meeting for which a quorum was not physically present.
I think we can define the fact that there's an executive committee because of the subcommittees and everything else. But beyond that, I'm interpreting what you said to mean that this is a structure to use primarily for emergencies. In other words, we're not going to be meeting here at 8 o'clock before every one of the regular meetings, which is what we do with the RMC. We have our executive committee meeting prior to that.
I'm agreeing with you that I hadn't envisioned that there would be a separate
Then I
executive
think that
committee
was his
meeting.
question.
Yeah.
No, not unless there's an overwhelming, let's do that. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm wondering, does the executive steering committee, when that meets, do the people have to be in person?
It would again be a 1/3 present, physically present, and the others could be virtual to make a quorum.
Any other questions or comments?
I just want to say
Go
thank
ahead.
you, Dawn. You did a really phenomenal job because we were all around the map when we threw this at you. So you did a really good job. And the only thing I'd like to go back to is the 2.32 on the 15 days, and just help me think it out loud because I'm not sure I can wrap my head around it. How far in advance do we typically have our agendas, Alana?
I would try to do 2 weeks in advance.
Yeah.
There's occasionally times where I'm just waiting to get like some summaries for the agenda or something that I might go to like the 10-day mark, but usually it's 2 weeks. So I think the intention of this is that you guys have something that you want to see featured on the agenda, that you get it to me in advance so I can make sure I have it to you all in a timely fashion.
And so typically because I am sensitive to the 15 days. It does seem a little far, but if you're preparing the agenda, then I see the need. So I'm just trying to figure out how we could balance that. If there was ever room that the chair could add something to the agenda. You know, because things can pop up at the last minute before a meeting. So I see a need for that leeway, but how do we balance that? How would, Dawn, do you have any suggestions, or Alana, that's your structure, so really you should be weighing in on that.
Is there anything stopping us from, like, the chair adding something as the meeting is starting, saying we have an amendment to the agenda, this presentation popped up, we'd like to add it?
Yeah, it's very common for bodies like this to amend an agenda, even at the meeting to add a new item. So that would not be out of order. Now, with regard to the 15 days, that's in your current procedures. That you'll notice that's not highlighted or anything. That's current. It can be changed. I mean, it was, I think, in there originally for the reason that Alana spoke to, and that is preparation of the agenda. But certainly the chair and the body, at the beginning of the meeting, they can amend the agenda. There can be an amendment that goes out in advance if the chair says, oh, gee, there's something we forgot. Sure.
Also, the agenda identifies, this agenda, for instance, 9 is a roundtable discussion. It's the opportunity to bring forward other issues that can get the full discussion. If you approach the chair before the meeting and say, this one's gonna take a little bit more time because it's really substantive,
Yeah.
you know, then they got a heads up, but there's always a place on the agenda for surprises.
Right. Sarah?
So I guess we're in uncharted territory these years post-COVID with like virtual or hybrid meetings. And let me preface by saying I'm a huge fan of hybrid meetings. I think they're great, bring a lot more participation to meetings. But I've looked around at other committees similar to this one and in size, and I'm just curious if this is a time to discuss how you might participate online, whether or not the camera needs to be on or off. I know that I'm not trying to, target anyone that's online with their camera off, but I think if we're ever going to have a conversation about setting new norms, this would probably be the best time to do that.
And you'd love to add that in there, but I don't know if that would be very popular.
I don't want to discourage participation, right? That's the opposite. I want to encourage it, right?
We have to always be cognizant of the sunshine law. And we can't just turn cameras on and off, which you know. And we also need to be as public about what we're discussing as we can be. So my understanding of what our attorney has said is that pretty much we stick to what we have. If it looks like an issue that may require more time, the chair could either put it off to another meeting or we could ask the majority to vote on it if they want to discuss it.
I just want to, if I could just make a comment, that participation virtually with the camera off still does qualify and satisfy sunshine requirements. They are, that person is participating, they're noted as present, and you know, they have full access to make comments. So it's not necessary to have the camera on to satisfy sunshine. There may be some other preference that the body would want that requirement, but you know, it wouldn't be necessary to make that change in this document.
Well, obviously, because a lot of people may participate by telephone.
Yeah, that's true.
So
That's true.
whether you got your hair done or not, maybe you would. Okay, what else?
That's all.
Sean.
Sure.
Again, just to talk, I think this is great. I still think 2.32 is problematic. I think it's well intended. I know it's existing. And I think it's well intended to try to get agenda items to staff early. But I think reading it strictly, it's problematic because it reads, it's saying a member cannot even consult with staff or a chair during that period of time. And I think that's a problem. I mean, what I think I would do with this is I would strike not later than 15 days before the meeting, and perhaps agenda items are at the discretion of the chair and staff.
If I could, I tend to agree with you. I think that if we struck the 15 days, it would allow, without any hesitation, someone to bring an issue to the chair or staff. And it's up to them as to whether or not it's too late or whether or not it can be added. So I think probably striking the 15 days would be perfectly okay.
No, I agree. Thank you.
So
And that's
it,
it.
I will just cross.
That's the reason why we're even looking at these operations. Because the sense that we got, this committee really wants folks to participate and not, you know, well, I didn't follow this rule or that rule, because that kind of messes it up. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about so for the executive steering committee with the 5 other at-large members, are those chosen ahead of time or are those chosen during that meeting where there's not a quorum?
In advance, they would be chosen prior. It would be an executive committee appointed by the chair that would serve when the need arises.
Any
On
other?
that,
Yes, sir.
so the chair appoints the subcommittee chairs. They also appoint the at-large members. There is I don't ever see this happening, but there is a possibility that the chair could stack that committee. Is that something we're concerned about?
I can't imagine why
I don't
the
either.
chair would even do that when the whole idea is, you know, you don't ask a person, well, what is your position on this or that? That's the reason we have such a varied group, because we want to get everybody's point of view before it's even taken to the council.
Absolutely.
I guess if somebody was devious, I'd get rid of the chair.
That would go back to the regional
And I'd go
planning
back
council to
the
change the
council,
chair.
but Yeah, I can't imagine, but I'll
So
be
I
very
just
cognizant of that.
See too
certainly
many
think the chair
things like that.
would stack that committee with people who are generally in attendance at meetings.
Yeah, there you go.
Because
Say,
always
hey, girl.
to have people that.
Point. Okay, so when he's chair again, he's chair of the council now. He does a great job. You had something. you wanted to
Yeah, I
say.
just have, this executive steering committee, was there a need for this? What was the kind of point of adding this, to the laws, was there a situation where this committee wasn't able to act because of, lack of a quorum, or, what is the reason for this being added?
Let me defer to Alana first on that.
I thought that was already in, honestly. Hold on one second. I'm gonna pull up the old procedures.
A lot of the things that are in here are just revisions of what already
Yeah.
exists.
It is
it's
incorrectly
not-
highlighted and underlined, actually, because that was already in the operating procedures. We had the executive steering committee shall consist of the agency chair, vice chair, the standing committee chairs, and 5 other members of the agency at large to provide for geographic balance of representation. So the new additions, is that it may act on behalf of the agency when a quorum of the agency is not
Yeah.
available. So I will correct that in this document.
Yes, your hand.
Just a, just a follow-up question, do they have the 5 at large been appointed already? I mean, have we?
No.
We haven't done that.
No, we have not done that.
Yes.
So the steering committee meeting would have to be properly noticed, right? And there'd be no preclusion the full membership attending the committee meeting and weighing in on the discussion, right?
Right. I mean, all of our meetings are open to the public.
And by the way, any of you who want to serve on either one of these committees can just say, I want to let Alana know. Because the idea of having these actual committees is to get people more engaged and to get more important discussions, because this group meets 4 times a year? And 4 times a year, there may be issues that come up in between where some of you may feel you can offer some recommendations that might even warrant an emergency meeting of the whole group. I don't know. But at least this is the position that it's created by volunteers, we want to be on a legislative committee, or we want to be on the natural resources committee, because we believe we have some support we can give that might be valuable to our communities. Okay, yes, ma'am, go ahead.
I just want to clarify because how it is now. It says the standing committee chairs and 5 other at-large members of the agency appointed by the chair. So I think I just want some clarification if the intention is to have specific people identified, or to make it clear that if you're an agency that's chosen for the executive steering committee, whoever's representing you, either an individual or alternate or something, is responsible to attend or act if there isn't a quorum.
Just the way it's drafted, it would be individuals, members of the agency.
But if you're the alternate for that individual,
Yeah.
then you could act on their
Oh, yeah.
behalf.
Right, okay.
You won't take a Joe Blow from the street. No. It's gotta be one of y'all or your alternative.
In other words, it would not be the chair saying, well, this organization shall have a representative on the executive committee. Rather, it would be, as Mayor Brown indicated a minute ago, it'd probably be those individuals who attend the meetings regularly who might be asked to serve on the executive committee.
The function of the committee is simply if we don't have a quorum, then we don't have, so I think it was stated before that the executive steering committee wouldn't necessarily likely have meetings outside of this meeting.
Yeah.
But if we were here and we're too short of a quorum, we have a good vibrant discussion and everybody's in agreement. The executive steering committee can act on the consensus of this body. If the executive steering committee has a quorum at that meeting.
That's important because the legislature was very precise in making determinations for organizations, like you have to have so many people present. And we didn't just dream this stuff up. Although I think we should have been much more creative here. Yes.
And that was my question, or what circumstances would ever the executive steering committee need to act? And essentially, if under 2.5, you don't get the quorum. Under rule 2.5, you don't get the quorum, and that would be when the executive steering committee would come into action. imagine why you would ever need a meeting of the executive committee anyway, and that's the time you would need the executive steering committee. So there's something can happen even if you don't have. And I'm wondering if that should be discussed under, the quorum section as compared to committees, because is there any other time you would need the executive steering committee to meet and not meeting, because you have the option of having special meetings whenever.
As drafted, it's very specific. It says the executive committee may act on behalf of the agency when a quorum of the agency is not available. That's the only time when a quorum is not available. So when there's not 51% of the agency present, then the executive committee could act.
That's so that it's legal.
And it makes sense to keep that under the committees section and in my mind, because it's defining a separate committee. So.
And in 16 years that I've been on the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, I think we've used this once or twice. So very, very infrequently, but it was very good that it was in the books when because we had some decisions that had to be made. And we didn't want to push it out. We didn't have a quorum. We were short by a couple. Everybody was in agreement. So on some certain items, the executive steering committee, which we had a quorum of that present, was able to act on behalf of the council. It's like twice, and how many meetings would that be? It's 10 times 16.
Yeah.
So for 2.8 attendance A, I was thinking about the failure to attend 4 consecutive meetings shall disqualify the member. I was curious if the member is the individual representing the agency or the agency as a member. And then is 4 consecutive meetings too many? Because that's an entire year if it's a quarterly meetings.
Well, the agent, I think it refers to the member, the person, not the organization, because the organizations are defined in our organizational statement.
Okay.
And then, sometimes things happen, so if you only said, say, 2 consecutive meetings, I don't know if that should be our threshold. I think 4 really does help to weed out those that are just like not showing up at all.
And that's if they didn't elect an alternate and there's an awareness of an alternate. Okay. And I was wondering with C, like that's where it gets into the alternates. Should there be a policy of a requirement to notify staff within a certain amount of time so that you or whoever can print one of these?
Absolutely. You've got your staff is gonna know, if I'm understanding your question.
Yeah, like maybe
I don't
within a
think anyone
week.
here wants to just say, well, let's get together. Everyone's gotta know.
She's saying about just charging them fees.
Oh, okay.
Or like
mean,
within
it's-
14 days, you know that you're not gonna make it, or there might be an alternate.
But that might not be the case. Like I'm thinking with the estuary programs, your management committee, like Ren couldn't show up, and so she assigned me to be the alternate, and it was like the day before or something, so.
Do you
yeah,
have
I
a
think-
record of like every person, primary person and alternate? Okay, so there's no missing spots there anymore.
No, I mean, there have been instances where neither them or their alternate could attend, but then they say this, like Natasha is showing up, on behalf of Pinellas County, but they've let me know about that. So
that makes sense, yeah.
Okay, does anyone else have anything they would like to suggest?
I just wanted to make the motion to accept this with Sean's correction. And I think you did a fine job, Don. Thank you.
Second that.
Thank you very much, Donna, for all your work. And I'm sure the minutes will incorporate these other suggestions.
Thank you very much. And could the record then reflect that this was approved by consensus?
That's a good point. Very smart.
You'll agree.
Yeah.
Right, Alana, what do we have next week? Presentation from you? Yeah, so we have.
thank you all.
All right. Yes, no, this is one I just recently found out more about PFAS. And I said, oh, I didn't, yes. And so we discussed it a little bit and then decided that University of Florida's Dr. Bowden has done quite a bit of research on this issue. And I imagine he's going to choose to discuss some of his research with us. That will be very important to you because, as you all know, the agency decided this year that our highest priority issue is going to be water. I believe that PFAS goes even beyond that, but this is a very good place to start. I'd like to ask Dr. Bowden if he would come forth and share with us his research. Is he here? All right. I don't see him. I thought he was here.
You
heard me?
should have been here, yes.
Like in person or online?
I thought he was gonna join online, because he's in Gainesville. Send him the agenda. Sorry, y'all, hold on.
All right, I'll tell you what to do.
We can come back to it, so if you wanna just go to the next
That's-
part of the agenda.
That's exactly what I'm gonna do. We've got some new members that we want to introduce, and I don't know if they're here, if they're online. But Hernando County has Carla Berman.
So I asked that each of our new members give just a 5-minute presentation, just letting us know about their agency or, you know, their jurisdiction and sort of what are the highlights of their, you know, their natural resources, what are some of the issues they're dealing with. And so we have Hernando County, Citrus County, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and then Sarasota Bay Estuary Program. And so Carla, are you online? Do you want to?
Yeah, hello, everyone.
Good. Well, if you wouldn't mind giving us a few minutes of your time to let everybody know what you're doing in your area and some of the concerns that you have.
Sure, I do have a presentation, and so if I can share it with you.
That would be good. Carla is from Hernando County. Carla, you didn't go away from us, did you?
No, ma'am, I'm still here.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we have it.
Great. So, like I said, my name is Carla Berman. I am a manager at Hernando County, and I actually manage 2 of our departments, Aquatic Services and Waterways, along with our Environmentally Sensitive Lands program. So just to give you a little brief, very brief history on Hernando County, it was established in 1843, and we were actually named after the Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto. We're known as the Florida Adventure Coast. We have freshwater rivers and springs, state forests and preserves, along with Gulf waters that provide opportunities for many land and water adventures for our residents and our tourists. The city of Brooksville is our county seat, and it is rich in history and traditions. We actually have Civil War properties in the area if you're interested. The only other city in our county is Weeki Wachee. It was incorporated decades ago, so it could be included on Florida maps to promote our beautiful Weeki Wachee Springs, which is known as our City of Mermaids. And you can see one of our famous mermaids on the screen right now. So like I said, Environmentally Sensitive Lands program is one that I manage. The ESL program has 5 preserves. They're listed on the screen. Cypress Lakes, Lake Townsend, Chinsegut Hill, which is one of our historic properties in the city of Brooksville, Thicket Hammock, and Peck Sink. Peck Sink actually has numerous sinkholes if you are interested in that, and it actually takes on approximately 11,000 acres of stormwater runoff. So it's a huge treatment area for us. The county's ESL mission is to preserve natural cultural, and scenic resources while enhancing the quality of life for present and future generations. Our preserves provide protection of water quality for our rivers, estuaries, springs, and drinking waters. They also have water recharge areas. They are preservation and restoration of sensitive wildlife habitats and scenic landscapes. They provide nature-based recreation opportunities along with outdoor educational experiences. And the ESL program is near and dear to my heart because this is where I actually started my career in Hernando County. So one of our exciting projects that we're doing on our ESL properties at Lake Townsend Preserve, we are currently in the permitting process with FWC to permit a Gopher Tortoise recipient site. The portion of the preserve is approximately 100 acres that we have been working on doing restoration. It was forested mixed hardwoods, and we are currently restoring this area into a sandhill habitat to create a more conducive habitat for the gopher tortoises. This area will only be utilized for our county projects that have gopher tortoises that need to be relocated. So from inland to our coast, the county also does a lot of marine resource projects. We currently have 2 large projects, one that's pretty seasoned, Ben-Dixon Reef, which is about 20 nautical miles off of our coastline. And then we are working on an artificial reef project for more shallow inland reefs. And that is actually being funded through Restore currently. So our artificial reef project that we are working on, we have 3 different areas. We have shallow, mid, and offshore reefs. This will be approximately 10 reef sites. We are currently working through the permitting process with the Army Corps to complete this. And we are actually doing baseline monitoring out in the Gulf right now for this site. So the overall goal of the Hernando County's artificial reef program is to construct and add to the diverse network of artificial reefs that will enhance recreational opportunities for a wide variety of users and enhance our nature-based tourism. Some of the objectives of our projects are to support the increasing recreational demand for offshore reef fishing and scuba diving opportunities, along with enhancing the abundance, distribution, structural diversity of our bottom habitat in the county's marine waters. So like I said, our Ben-Dixon Reef has been seasoned. It's been in the waters since the late 90s. It started with the deployment of 10 M40 Army tanks, and that's kind of what you see in the top left. That's what they look like currently. So they're providing a lot of habitat for our marine resources. All of these were taken at Ben-Dixon. They all were, so we have the tanks. Bottom left are reef balls that you frequently see dropped. The bottom right are large stormwater culvert boxes. It was just a concrete square with a circle in it. And then the top right is a culvert, which definitely can tell. So that's our hope, is that once we put these structures in, that this is what they grow to and add to the habitat off the coast. So our Parks Department actually has some projects going on as well. This is our Linda Peterson Park. It is on the west side of the county. Linda Peterson project is currently under the conceptual phase. We've done some shoreline stabilization out there, but we are still continuing to have erosion issues along the areas. And so the county's hope is to continue working with this project and restoring the eroding shoreline, doing restoration of the plantings. This area is also one of our manatee refuge areas. And so we are having discussions with Save the Manatee Club to see what needs to be done to maybe bring in additional regulations in that area or close off certain areas at certain times to allow the manatees to have a safe haven. So like I said, this is in the conceptual phases right now, but the county is continuing with this project and hopes that it'll be done in a couple of years. One of the projects that's actually in design phase right now is at Jenkins Creek. And this is actually across the road from Linda Peterson, so they're right next to each other. Jenkins Creek is actually a park. It was one of our preserves, but it was taken out. So it's one of our parks along our west coast. It's under design phase, like I said. We have permitting for a replacement of that existing pier that you see along with the pedestrian bridge. But we are going to our second phase and adding an additional boat ramp on the south side of the pedestrian bridge. And then we are putting a large boardwalk along the western island, so on the west side of that bridge. Right now, that area has had a lot of pedestrian traffic and trampling. There's graffiti in the area, and it's the shoreline is being heavily eroded. And so the county's hope is that putting a large boardwalk in there with educational opportunities, maybe some fishing bump outs, will control the amount of environmental degradation that's going on in that area. The county will also be doing a large shoreline restoration and replanting in that area once the structures are in. And so this is actually going to be another one of our restore projects that we are starting to work on this year. So two of our rivers that are popular and heavily utilized in our areas is the Mud River and the Weeki Wachee River. So the county is currently studying these two rivers because we have had some issues on them in the last year, including water quality degradation. We've had a large macroalgae bloom, some reduction in our submerged aquatic vegetation quantities out there, and then we have also had manatee deaths in the area, and that was from the macroalgae blooms. So the county organized a working group with several entities to kind of come to the table and find solutions that will address these issues. And we are always open to having discussions with anybody else who's interested in this, to kind of help and support the county in making sure that we can combat the issues that we're having out there. To see if there's anything that we can do or promote among the residents that are out there to kind of help that area. So if you have any ideas or solutions, please feel free to reach out to me. I appreciate any discussions in regarding that. So, and lastly, one of the other projects that we are working on is we are working with FWC to have a manatee protection zone established along our Mud River and the associated water bodies, tributaries to this river. So this MPZ will restrict speed and operation of vessels. That will also allow protection of manatees from vessel collisions and or harassment. So right now, the majority of this area is resume normal speed, which means boats are at plane. And so we've had some strikes out there. It's very shallow, it has a lot of narrow, tight turns. And so bringing it down to slow speed will ensure public safety along with manatee safety. And so that is one of the other projects that we are working on. So those are just a couple of things that Hernando County is working on. And if anybody has questions about any of them, I am more than happy
Does
to
anyone
address
have
them.
any questions they would like to ask, Carl?
Well, I'm always speaking up. Sorry about that. Great presentation, Carla. Thank you. Who specifically are you working at with FWC on the manatee protection zone?
So we're working with their the imperiled species along with the boating safety. And so my contact over there is Emma Kindly and Kate Grimes, Pebbles Simons. And so those are in the divisions that we have to go through to have our ordinances reviewed and all of our maps approved and whatnot for the MPZ.
Thank you. That's a big agency, so it helps me. Thank you.
Yep.
Does anyone else have anything? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, one more question on that, Carla. Hey, this is Ed Short from the estuary program. Is the manatee protection zone year round or is it a seasonal zone?
It will be year round for us. So we'll actually put it in as a new ordinance in the county ordinances. And so it will, yeah, year round for us. We're not going to do seasonals on ours.
We'll appreciate continuing to receive updates from you as you become more involved with us, and we're very happy you're part of our group here now. Did someone else have a question? Yes. Sir.
Yes. I do. Carla, it's Mark Schrammick with National Marine Fisheries Service. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. I'll follow up with you. I'm very interested to learn more about this SAB restoration up there in the mud. Do you know, does that require a Corps of Engineers permit? To me, it sounds similar to the activities that were undertaken probably 10, 15 years ago in Crystal River called Save Crystal River. Are you familiar with that project?
Yeah, so I'm familiar from the permitting side. So in regard to the restoration up there, but yeah, we're working with the Water Management District and IFIS to see what can be done. So right now we have to wait for that dredge to finish on the Weeki Wachee River before we go in there, but we're trying to get all our ducks in a row. So we're ready to go once that project ends.
Okay, terrific. I'll reach out to you offline, but thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Anybody else?
This is Sally Thompson, and I'm not sure if this is Hernando County's concern, but I'm worried about the Chassahowiska Wildlife Management Area and what's happening with water. And I don't know who, but since we're including all this area in the expanded expansion of the agency on Bay and Coastal Management, who would be and how would we be dealing with that? Because there's serious issues with Chassahowiska.
Yeah, we have a small portion of the Chas River in our area, but I can definitely get you some contact points for that. I know that IFIS is looking at it in particular, but I can reach out to our marine agent and see if she has another point of contact for you.
Well, I think it's something that the whole agency should be concerned with. So thank you.
Yes, anybody else? Right, then I'm going to move on to introduce the other new members. Citrus County, we have James Toy. James.
Hey, good morning.
Good
My
morning.
name is James Toy. I am the new Intergovernmental Affairs Manager for the Citrus County Board of County Commissioners. I have a very long tenure here of about a month and a half, so this has been a little bit of a crash course into the natural resources here in Citrus County. I originally come by way of Polk County, so I'm a little bit more familiar with the Central Florida area originally. Some may argue that the greatest natural resource down there is Publix, although some other people also say Sheriff Grady Judd, just depends on who you ask. But very excited to be here today representing Citrus County and the beautiful Nature Coast up here. And just a little bit about Citrus County. We were established in 1887. We were, and I did not know this originally, part of Hernando County. So no hard feelings towards Hernando, but there was a split in 1887. We have a rich history here. Our county seat is Inverness, which is its own community with vibrant historical roots. And we have one other municipal body here in the county, and that is the city of Crystal River. Just wanted to give you a brief overview about our conservation efforts. You know, Citrus County has a very long history of prioritizing conservation. About 30% of our land is permanently protected from development due to conservation measures. And if you combine that with our bodies of water, that means 50% of our land, total land mass here in Citrus, will never be developed. It will permanently be protected. This not only safeguards our environment, but it also fuels our economy. We have a very nature-based economy here in the Nature Coast, specifically in Citrus County. And this is all part of, conserving our natural resources. And just some interesting facts I thought I'd share with all of you this morning. Just over 1% of the county is zoned for commercial use, and less than 1% is zoned for industrial use. And I think that really underscores both the historical and ongoing drive for conservation efforts here in the county. Kind of broadly, we have a wealth of freshwater resources, including springs, rivers, lakes, and wetlands, which provide critical habitats for a variety of wildlife. And one thing that we are very well known for here in Citrus County is the manatees, and that is certainly important. Part of the efforts we have related to our rivers and lakes, and thankfully survived the recent budget process, is our seagrass bed restoration, especially in the Homosassa River. And of course, that is important to the ecosystem here, and especially for the manatees. A little bit about our coastline. We have about 52 miles of coastline here in Citrus County, and is largely undeveloped due to previous conservation efforts. This supports healthy ecosystems for marine life, and again, attracts visitors to our area. We do have one beach. It's actually a man-made beach. It's called Fort Island. But that also serves as a natural habitat for marine life in the region. But that's just a brief overview. I apologize. We had some technical difficulties on our end with the presentation, so I wish I could have dove into a few more things this morning. But we really value forums like this. We think that the work that the Regional Planning Council performs is critically important, both for our region and for the state of Florida. So Citrus County is very happy to be included. And if you have any questions, I will do my best with my month and a half of knowledge to answer them, but very grateful to be here this morning.
Okay, anybody have any questions they want to ask James? This time? Well, I'm gonna introduce again to somebody we all know after these 4 introductions. Vicki Parsons is here. She's the editor of Soundings. And one of the things that we want to start doing more and more is getting input from each of you, even though you've been on this committee for a while, about the groups that you work with, some of your priorities, some of the things that you want to focus on. But we definitely want you to get to know our new members because they all have important things to share. And I know it, Camilla is here. Yes, Camilla, tell us a little bit about you and what you would like to share.
Yeah, of course. Good morning, everybody. My name is Camila Colon Reyes. I work in the Plant City Field Office with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. So we are a agency under the USDA. Our role under the USDA is to, as our name states, conserve natural resources. In doing so, we do it specifically with farmers. So our goal, I did bring a short presentation as well. I don't know if the time allows, but I'd be happy to share it as well. And our role in the community is to provide financial incentive and technical assistance to farmers in order to create a more sustainable ag production. And also, as I'm sure many of y'all know, agriculture is one of those fields that is slowly vanishing due to commercial building and urbanization. So it's part of the USDA's also goal to continue supplying food for a growing population. So those all go hand in hand. We have a couple of programs that are most popular that we offer. The most popular one is the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. Its acronym is EQIP. We are very fond of acronyms in my agency, so pardon me if you hear an acronym, feel free to stop me and ask me what it means. Sometimes so used to using them, I kind of forget. That program is a program that provides financial incentive for conservation practices. A conservation practice can be anything from doing a water retention pond or irrigation systems to something as simple as cover crops. So we're just trying to take back the land, bring more organic matter in the case of cover crops, and in the case of retention ponds, we know we want to avoid sinkholes. So we try to use the available water that's in the field. So the purpose is the water drains to the water retention pond and it's used again in the irrigation system. There's hundreds of practices that we offer. In my county right now, I work as a soil conservationist in the Plant City Field Office. So in that office, we deal primarily with strawberry producers and with cattle operations. I will shortly at the end of July be reporting as manager to the Brooksville Field Office. So I'll be associated with Pasco and Hernando counties. Each field office deals with different counties. So we have offices all over the state. Some offices deal with one county, some two, some three. It just depends on the area. But we have offices that work with every county in the state. So it's just about identifying which field office is nearest to you to find that assistance for farmers. The other program that we offer is the Conservation Stewardship Program. It's a 5-year program that gives farmers an annual financial incentive just to be a good steward of the land. So doing enhancement practices. So instead of doing maybe a single species cover crop, you're doing a multi-species cover crop. Maybe you're installing owl boxes or bat boxes to increase wildlife, pollinators, etc. There's also a vast array of practices under that category of practices. The NRCS also offers easement programs. And we partner with FSA, with the Farm Service Agency, for all our eligibility requirements. If you know of any farmers in your area, that is the first step to get yourself registered with Farm Service in order to be eligible for our programs. As far as us, we try to be as technically savvy as we can. When we don't have the information, we look to our partners for assistance. So we rely on IFAS for all of our ag recommendations. And that is the information we provide to our farmers. We also try to collaborate in forums like this. So we've worked with the Hillsborough Soil and Water Conservation District in the past. They're just starting to revamp, so I'm sure we'll be working with them shortly. And we try to participate in forums like this, so we're happy to join. And any questions, I'm more than welcome to answer. I am stepping in today for my district conservationist, which is the manager for my office. Her name is Leslie Dia Alvarez. So if you're working with Pinellas in Hillsborough County, that would be your point of contact. I will soon, at the end of July, be reporting to Brooksville, and I will be attending Hernando and Pasco counties.
Did you have anything else you wanted to present that you pretty well covered the waterfront, but
Yeah, let me just look quickly through I think I covered mostly everything.
Well, I can post your presentation on our website too.
Yeah, that works
So that
too.
lets everyone know where it's.
And if anyone has any questions, feel free to contact
any-
us.
does anyone here have any questions? No, you want to ask Camille?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. We're glad you're part of this. Looking forward to get to know you.
Thank you.
I guess the last new member is. Isn't it?
I think so.
No, I know that. Okay,
Uh,
Miss that Sarasota Bay. We have Jay Leveron.
Thank you very much. Yes, Jay Leveroni, Sarasota Bay Estuary Program Staff Scientist here as an alternate for our Director, Dave Tomasco, Dynamo Dave, I call him. I don't have a presentation. I was just notified a few days ago about this, but I do understand. I think that Dave will be given a presentation at an upcoming meeting, and stay tuned because he'll take you on a ride. He's got a lot of information about what the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program is currently doing. Just a little bit of history or reason why I think we're a good fit for this agency is we sit at the mouth of the Tampa Bay area. I think our jurisdictional handoff is the Manatee Avenue Bridge between Anna Maria Sound and Sarasota Bay. We go all the way down to the Venice Inlet where Charlotte Harbor Estuary Program or the Coastal and Heartland Program takes over. So we've got Southwest Florida covered pretty well through the estuary programs. And my experience with the estuary program for the last 16 years when I came on board has actually been collaborating with Charlotte and Tampa on some regional issues that, do not know jurisdictional boundaries. A lot of these are water quality and resource issues. For instance, the Piney Point spill came in and it impacted northern Sarasota Bay, and we worked collaboratively with the Tampa Bay folks on that. A lot of seagrass issues, a lot of nutrient management, wastewater, stormwater issues are pretty much the same in all of our areas. So I think, especially with Dave on board as our director for the last several years, this could be a really good collaboration. I, for experience, was doing when we developed numeric nutrient criteria for regional estuaries. We worked in collaboration to establish new water quality standards for the bays. We actually even explored the tidal creeks between 2013 and 2018, trying to see if there's any way we could understand water quality dynamics in tidal creeks that are protective of those services. And that was a lot of fun working with Tampa and Charlotte Harbor as well. Don Kahn was our legal counsel for many years, and we miss you. And actually, this will be my first and probably last meeting here because I will be retiring soon at the end of the fiscal year in September. So It's been a pleasure to meet all of you. My work since Dave came on board has been primarily working on the habitat restoration projects within our watershed. The BIL funding hit through EPA has allowed me to, I've had several projects teed up, shovel ready, however you want to call them, and with the funding support from the BIL money, we've been able to work with our partners to prioritize these projects, and we're knocking them off like this. So going out on a high note, it's been really exciting to work with Dave, which means my position will be open October 1st. We will be announcing it in early July. And so we will make sure that we spread the word on that. So as I said, Dave is going to give a presentation at an upcoming meeting. So if there are any particular questions you have, I'd be happy to answer them.
Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask this time?
Not you, Mark.
Okay, well, I want to encourage you all to be thinking about some of the things you're doing, because even at the end of the meeting, we'll go around the room and you can point out some events that are coming up or issues that you're dealing with. But I mentioned, I asked Alana, I couldn't see her because you were in front of it. But I think Vicky's back there. Oh, she's over there.
I think in plain sight.
Anyway, Vicky is the editor of Soundings. And we really want to be able to share these kinds of things with everybody in our region and in our state. They're important and people need to be aware of what you're doing. But I want to go back to our prior agenda item where Dr. Bowden from the University of Florida is going to give us an update on some of his work on PFAS. So we're going to turn this over to Dr. Bowden. He's online.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just figure out how to get my screen here. Can you see my slides okay?
Oh, yeah.
Not yet. Now we do.
You do now? Okay. All right, well, thank you for the opportunity to speak today about PFAS. Probably could spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours talking about PFAS. So, but only 10 minutes, I'm going to go through as many things as I can, just to give you a breadth of the work we're doing. I'd be happy to meet with anybody offline, in a call or email or another Zoom, because we have quite a bit of work that we're doing in the state. So my lab is at the University of Florida. I'm part of veterinary medicine through toxicology, chemistry, and environmental engineering. So we develop methods, chemical methods to measure a lot of pollutants of emerging concern in different types of medium, whether it be environmental or things that we're exposed to around our common places in our houses and workspaces. We measure where these chemicals go once they're released into the environment, and then we focus on what kind of toxicological effect they have on those exposed organisms. We're funded by a lot of different local, state, and federal agencies, and we've been working on PFAS for a long time. We have over 55 papers on PFAS with over 20 projects ongoing. So I'm just going to keep moving since it's only 10 minutes. If you don't know anything about PFAS, PFAS are kind of our own fault. Nobody likes to buy products that break down or don't last a long time. So all these crazy chemists got in the lab and they said, all right, we're going to make things that don't stain, that don't break down, that last a long time. So when you buy something, you get your bang for your buck. And so they came up with these forever chemicals. And then basically these forever chemicals are made with these carbon fluorine bonds here. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but these carbon fluorine bonds basically are the strongest bonds in chemistry. So once they're used in an application, they last a long time. Unfortunately, once they're released into the environment, they last a long time. And they've been used in a whole array of different materials, things that you wouldn't expect, like dental floss, for example, food packaging, shampoo, cosmetics. They're pretty much in almost everything that we look at in the lab. But probably the biggest one you're probably most aware of is the use of AFFF, aqueous film forming foams, which are used at military bases or airports to put out fires. I don't have a lot of time to spend on this slide, but I love this slide because it really puts in context how water is impacted by our activities. So whether it be something like a manufacturing site that has effluent, either known or unknown, put into the waterways, you have emissions in air. PFAS are highly mobile. They can travel in the atmosphere. They found them in the Arctic and polar bears. They found them in countries that don't produce PFAS. Landfills are another depot of PFAS. Once we throw all of our products away, they go to landfills, but things like biosolids get taken from landfills and are land applied. You have runoff into groundwater or waterways. Obviously, the use of those AFFFs at airports or military bases is another extreme source. And then wastewater treatment plants currently today only remove about 10% of PFAS. So all the effluent that goes back into the waterways is chock full of PFAS. And unfortunately, in Florida, since we rely so much on our water, fishing and drinking water and recreation, this is a big concern. Our lab has a bunch of different PFAS assays. So we do the targeted method, which is what the EPA does, where we have a known list of PFAS that we're looking for, and we do a quantitative assessment. We also do what we call non-targeted analysis, which is something we do to look at all the unknowns that we don't have standards for, and I'll get into that a little bit later. I don't have time to talk about all these projects, but we've worked on a lot of different things with PFAS. I know you guys mentioned seagrass. We've measured PFAS in seagrass in the state of Florida, even in Tampa Bay. We published that paper. I'd be happy to provide it if anybody wants to look at it later. We look at a lot of different marine organisms like manatees and sharks. We look at a lot of different sediments and soils and and we're getting into agriculture as well and seafood. So these things are very pervasive, and unfortunately, we're exposed to them in a lot of different ways. Just as a slide to show you how important PFAS is, in 2009, kind of the federal government started paying attention to PFAS, but over the last couple of years, it's been ramped up quite a bit to now that they actually have, earlier this year, they came up with these maximum contaminant levels that are going to be enforced in 5 years. So all drinking water that comes through our tap has to have a couple PFAS under a certain regulatory limit. So this is only going to get more and more on everybody's plate, that they're going to have to start managing these things. And really, we don't have a lot of great information yet about where these things go and when they get in the environment. So some of the data that's available, there are a few publications that do something in like local areas, but if you're not familiar with the Environmental Working Group, there's a website where you can actually click on it. Now, most of this is based on drinking water, but it does highlight some of the military bases that are in Florida as well that could be potential sources. But for a large state of it there's not a lot of data on where PFAS are in Florida. So we've been working in the last 3 or 4 years to try to fix this. And one of the studies that we just published recently, and again, I'd be happy to provide this later if anybody wants to look at it. We did a study, we're looking at over 450 drinking water taps in the state of Florida. And we did this through crowdsourcing. So we reached out to all kinds of interested environmental working groups, environmentally focused citizens, students at universities, and we collected several drinking water taps. We sent out kits to people with instructions and protocols. And on the map right here on the right, you see kind of a heat map of the red being the most contaminated areas for drinking that didn't have in a lot of different places in Florida. So, but one of the big things I'm here to talk about is our surface water project. So this is a project that started in 2020. We're basically wanted to try to fill in those gaps, figure out where PFAS were in the state of Florida. Now we know that there's probably a high PFAS around military bases and airports, but water is a very free-flowing, evolving resource. We wanted to see where else it was. And so again, we did the crowdsourcing. We had over 130 undergraduate students and 75 engaged citizen scientists and organizations. And overall, we had over 2,300 sites that we sampled over 2 years. And all the data I'm going to show you isn't published yet. We're actually in the middle of a peer review process, but within the next month, it should be freely available to share. And we had YouTube videos and other information that helped the samplers know how to collect. So this is this quick few data slides. So this right here is the sites, some of the sites we sampled where we measured PFAS, then what you're seeing right here is total PFAS. So in this assay, we looked at 92 PFAS, which is about 50 more than the EPA method. So this includes a lot of novel species. And the total PFAS is basically the sum of all those that we measured at each individual site. And the more red it gets, the higher levels we found. And overall, we found 33 unique PFAS. And one site was over 3,000. And if you remember from the slide with the maximum contaminant levels, while it is drinking water, the level that they're shooting for PFOA and PFOS is 4 parts per trillion. And these some PFAS are upwards of 800 parts per trillion. So just give you that context. So the 2 PFAS that they are working on monitoring are PFOA and PFOS. They're the 2 most common PFAS that we know to date. In Pinellas County and Hillsborough County, we had the most sites that had samples that were above those for PFOA. And Pinellas, we had 100 samples that we collected, surface water samples that had values above the 4 parts per trillion. So amongst all the different counties that we looked at, Pinellas and Hillsborough County were amongst the worst in terms of the number of sites that were above the 4 parts per trillion. We had, I think across, we had over 900 sites for these 2 individual PFAS. With all those data points, we're able to create heat maps. So heat maps allow us to fill in the spots where we don't have samples collected. So it gives us an idea of the pervasiveness of PFAS. And so this is a total PFAS heat map. And on the right, you see the PFOA heat map. So anything that's, for the PFOA heat map, anything that's shaded that's like maybe light orange or brighter to red is an area that is of major concern for PFOA contamination. This is a blow up of kind of the Pinellas, Hillsborough, Manatee counties. And these are showing different species of PFAS. So you have PFBS, which is one of the short chain sulfonic acids. And then we have over here in the bottom right, PFOS, which are long chain sulfonic acid. So we see both long chain and short chain. And then we also have several carboxylic acids as well. And you can see that, in this area, at least, they're all pretty high. I mean, there are some that are a little bit lower. Some counties, some areas we look at are only very specific to certain PFAS. And this has to do most likely with what the sources are that are contributing to these levels. I just want to point out too, that all of these samples were collected at one point in time, right? So these are all single snapshots collected over 2 years. But what I also like to point out too is that since these are all collected different times over 2 years, the fact that they're all high tells me that there's a significant issue here. So one of the things we did once we got all this data, and again, I'd be happy to share this with anybody if they want. We're like, okay, well, what's the cost for this? So one of the things, and I don't have a slide here because I cut it out, but one of the things we thought that was contributing the most to this was military sites, and in fact, they probably are a big contributor, but that didn't explain where we saw all of the points and all the high levels. And so one of the things we got kind of connected with was the Florida Department of Environmental Protection has a pollution notice bulletin website where you can actually go and look at all the different spills of all kinds of different things. So raw sewage, treated or untreated wastewater, biosolids, other various chemical spills. And up until the time we did stop our sampling, there was over 7,000 spills that were recorded. And overall, I think it was like 1.4 billions of things spilled across the state of Florida. And so we were very interested to take that information and try to make some sense out of it. We spent about, I would say, 6 weeks going through because the Excel sheet's not very user-friendly, but this basically shows a map of all the locations. So if you go to date, there's almost 11,000 noted spills, and all those dots are all where the spills occurred. And why this is interesting is if you compare the spill on the right, the spill points, to the heat map on the left, where we find the highest PFAS, they look very closely identical. So what came out to us as maybe military sites are a big contributor. We are interested in pursuing further the idea of these other chemical spills as being a large contributor. And PFAS are in high concentrations in raw sewage, treated, untreated wastewater, biosolids, especially biosolids and other types of sludges. They're a very high concentration. So this is all visual, and we're working now to try to do some more statistical analyses with this data. Now, if you were to look at just specific types of spills, so this is just an example of raw sewage. So on the left, you have the spill points. On the right, you have a heat map that shows the raw sewage spill concentrations across the state of Florida, but I zoomed in into the Pinellas-Hillsborough County region. And you can see here that in that area over this time frame, there's roughly around 30 to 60 million gallons of raw sewage that's been reported spilled. Now, I'm guessing that a lot of that is probably underreported, but it is, in my opinion, a large contributor to probably a lot of the PFAS that we see, because once PFAS get into the environment, they stay there a very long time. We did the same thing with untreated wastewater. So you can see here that in this case, Orlando and Miami are much worse than the Hillsborough Pinellas region, but you still zoom in, you still get, I think, roughly up to 9 million gallons or more of untreated wastewater that's been spilled in some of the areas around Pinellas County. So this is my last slide. So, one of the things that we do is we're very collaborative. We work with a lot of state entities. We work with a lot of local and city and county governments as well. We do fee for service, but we also are very collaborative. So we do a lot of work with people to measure PFAS and a variety of different matrices. But the project we're working on now that we're hoping to continue expanding with the data that you just saw is that there's a recent paper that came out in South Carolina where they did an analysis of different waterways, and the blue bars, if you can see them, very small, are what was measured at sites using targeted approaches. So targeted approaches, and just 1 minute to explain this, I'll get too chemical heavy here, are based on the standards that are available. And one of the things that is a crux in PFAS analysis is that most of the entities that make PFAS don't share standards or haven't yet. And so there's only about maybe a couple hundred standards that are available out of 15,000 chemicals that are currently available for use. And so when we do our measurements with our targeted methods, we're only looking at those that we have standards for. That doesn't mean that they comprise a large percentage of the PFAS that are actually present in samples. And there's no way to look for that unless you develop new tools. And one of the new tools that just came out is to look at what we call total organic fluorine. So this basically looks at all the fluorine content that is in these samples. And what this allows us to do is come up with a number, and you can see the orange bars there are much higher than the blue bars. It tells us, at least in this paper in South Carolina, that the target method is only capturing a very small percentage of the total PFAS that is present in samples. So we are in the process of working towards developing these types of same analyses in the Pinellas, Hillsborough, Tampa Bay area region. We're using this as our site. We have a lot of samples that were collected there. We're going to continue collecting new samples to compare to the ones we collected a couple years ago. And we're going to be doing our target analysis, but we're also going to be doing this total organic fluorine. So we're going to get a sense of whether or not we're capturing a significant portion of the PFAS. And then we're also doing what we call non-target analysis, which is a way for us to identify what some of these unknown, potentially very highly concentrated species are in some of these samples. So we'll be able to actually uncover what some of them are that are contributing to the high total organic fluorine. And so we're just about ready to start this project. We want to work with, we are very interested in working with communities because we feel like that helps our science get to the people faster, and us being involved allows us to help explain what the information means and how we can actually move forward to start fixing or attacking these problems. So whether it's funding opportunities or working with entities to help collect samples, we're very open to doing that. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And let me know if you need me to provide any more materials.
Okay. Do we have some questions to ask Dr. Bowden? Where do you want to start over here?
Go ahead, Phil.
Are you working with any municipal or county water departments in this whole process?
Yes, we are, but I have to say that PFAS has become political. So I find there's three types of people. There are people who want to know their what. They want to know what the numbers are. There's people who don't want to know at any cost. And there's people who want to know until they know and then they don't want to know. So I find that those people who really want to know and are really being proactive, those are the ones that we work with the most because they're the ones that would rather know the information now and know what the problem is now. But we've run into some areas where we've had some resistance. So, but I'll just let you know right now, the landscape of PFAS regulation, measurement, monitoring, it's only going to get ramped up over the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to become a significant issue because again, these chemicals are very mobile. They're highly bioaccumulative. So they're, anything you look at right now that you look into whether or not there's PFAS in it, there is. They're in all of us. Right now, one of the biggest issues in Florida is that there's very little human data to look at, whether or not people living in coastal communities are more vulnerable because they eat fish that are contaminated. So we try to work with them, but it's hit or miss.
If I could ask one more question.
Sure.
Maybe this isn't your area, but what do you think of the prospects for potential means of eliminating or lowering levels of PFAS in, for instance, municipal supplies where we know some have higher levels than we should, and we're gonna have to remove that or lower it at least.
I think I'm all in support of measures to reduce PFAS. But what I'll say though is that a lot of the issues are our own individual fault, right? Our behaviors, what we buy, what we use, consume, what we throw away, that's not going to probably change. So putting in measures is going to help, but it's not going to solve the problem. It's going to maybe help lessen the issue in terms of how much impacts our environment. But until there's regulation in terms of how things are produced, manufactured, distributed commercially, I think that's really where the biggest issue or biggest kind of bottleneck of actually fixing the issue that we don't have to work on in the back end, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
Dr. Brown, it's Ed Trout from the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. I just want, I'm sure you're aware of, there's ongoing research by the University of South Florida, Steve Moravsky's group and Charlotte Gilbert.
Sure.
Work that I think is very complementary to some of your research that was conducted by some of the sediment and fish tissue studies they've done with PFAS, sort of corroborate hotspots around the old Tampa Bay region. And the levels within some of the fish tissues are approaching, human health concerns. I know they're working on a follow-up grant and they're forming a management technical advisory group that I'm not sure if you're part of, but it seems like you should be if you're not on that. But they're going to do some follow-up work within the bay proper to further test sediment, water, and fish tissues for not only PFAS, but other emerging contaminants of concern. So if you're not plugged into that group, I can connect you, but certainly want to continue to encourage this work to be continued to pursue within the bay proper.
Yeah, I know Steve. We've published a paper together. I'm not familiar with the working group. I'd be obviously very interested in participating. My philosophy is that we're very, very behind in terms of how much data we have. So I always encourage more people working on this, more studies to be funded to really get a better understanding of the issue we have. And so, yeah, I'm definitely always very interested in working with others when we can.
I think the component of that grant is also working with specific communities on sort of the outcomes of what they find in this enhanced sampling. So it'd be good for you to plug into that group.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's probably the biggest things that I tried to push with my research is to try to incorporate as many people as possible, because the only way the state is going to actually make decisions is if people start speaking up. So And understanding how it impacts them, I think is a very important part of the research translation.
Excuse me, I want to mention something. It seems to me, I did not really personally, as a lay person, not a scientific person, just a person, didn't know that much about what PFAS was. And the more I went on my computer and found out more and more, it seems to me what has already been mentioned, it's extremely critical that all of the people who are doing research on this do some type of coordinated effort. So I'm going to be encouraging you personally, bring this, we may be able to have some kind of a report or something that comes back to the regional council. Because this is a matter, you can speak in scientific language, but it's got to be translated so the general population understands what in the world you're talking. How does it affect them? What are the health impacts on people? And what I read scared the liver out of me. I mean, it's very important. And if you guys can talk to each other and help us identify others who are working on this so we can get the big picture, then maybe there's something we as a group can do to let the people know and do something. Because we need to find the sources, absolutely. We need to identify the areas, absolutely. But at some point in time, we've got to let the general public know. So if we have to do reverse osmosis on our water supplies, if this stuff is in the springs, which I'm hearing, I mean, that's scary.
We just submitted a paper looking at PFAS in, I think, over 60 Florida springs, and we do find it in springs. So.
Yeah, somebody else.
Can I just jump in because, you know, as Dr. Bowden mentioned, it's going to be, you know, it's an emerging contaminant concern. It's really going to ramp up the effort we have for this. And I originally saw his presentation at the Gulf of Mexico conference, and it was startling for me. That's why I wanted to get it in front of you all. We have so many wonderful agencies in the room, and you know, our municipalities, our counties are here, and I think we can work together to try and come up with some kind of action. And I don't know what that looks like now, but you know, this year you guys did rank water quality as the top priority for us to be concerned about. And so I see this as a major water quality issue, and I hope that we can continue these conversations and do something about it.
Okay, did you have a comment?
Beat me to it.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Dr. Bowden. It's Natasha Burrell, Nellis County.
Hey.
We've been waiting for that report for a while, so looking forward to.
Unfortunately, like the student working on the project just took a little longer than I was hoping for, but we finally finished it.
Yeah, and kind of tapping into what Barbara and Alana have said. And at the Gulf of Mexico, basically, I'm really curious. You kind of touched on this a little bit about outreach education. A lot of our agencies are very active in social media and getting information out that way. Do you have any guidance right now? Because, you know, when we're looking at that, and I administer one of our social media pages, so it's near and dear to my heart. When you present this information, yes, here's the data, but what are your behavior change metrics? What can you do? What are things to be aware of versus just here's the stark results. Now, what do we do? So I'm kind of curious if you have any toolkits developed, or maybe that's an action that we can consider how we can tap into, especially with some of the stuff I'm reading about with funding available to get more of this data open. And I know that's a Gulf of Mexico goal, is connecting more people to the data so that it's not more of these silos. So
absolutely right.
Yeah, great comment. I just want to point out too, and I didn't mention this earlier, and again, I only had 10 minutes, so if I had more time, obviously I could delve into a lot of this stuff in more detail, but we plan to make all our data publicly available. So everything that, once the paper is published, we're going to make all the data points publicly accessible. So we'll be sharing that with anybody who wants. And So obviously including those links to the data with you that you can share on your social media is something we'd be happy to do. That's actually a great idea. In terms of trying to relay the information to people, I think coming up with materials is a good idea, but even in our past experience coming with materials, there's still gaps there that people don't quite get the impact. It's not the same as being in person or on a Zoom. And so in some areas that we've worked in a lot, they've had community meetings where they've invited people from the communities to come to see a presentation. And I've gone to those, I've given talks, I've stayed afterwards to talk to people. I've given my information out. So if anybody who's at those meetings wants to contact me directly to talk about, they irrigate their yard and they want to know if, there's PFAS in it or whatever, I try to make myself as available as possible to people because I feel like that's, maybe not the most widespread way to make people understand, but it's been the most effective. So if anybody's got any other ways of trying to reach people and educate them, I'm obviously very interested. It's a little outside my wheelbox, my scope of what I have expertise in. I'm a chemist, so I like to, think that I can explain the chemistry to the layperson, but there is more nuance to teaching people about what the issues are. So happy to talk more about that once we release the data, if there's ways you can think of to make this more accessible. And again, I'm happy to come talk to communities as well, because we're doing stuff beyond just water. We're working on seafood and, we published a study looking at PFAS and the dust captured in home air conditioning filters. And we found, extremely high concentrations of PFAS in our houses. So, there's lots of things that I can tell people that they can take home and help reduce their exposure.
In terms of things that people can actively do, there was a really good Vox article that I was reading about PFAS, and something that was mentioned was you can look at the ingredients list on whatever you're buying, especially like cosmetic and personal care items. And if it has anything fluoro something in it, then that is referring to PFAS. And then also you can go to websites like the Environmental Working Group, which they usually have different products on there and like a score of their like health implications too. So those are like two direct ways for people to become more educated about it and then prevent, being conscious consumers.
But just to add one more thing to that. So one big thing in the field of agriculture right now that's becoming a huge story is the fact that they use PFAS as a propellant in sprays for agricultural use. And there's a lot of states that have had large PFAS issues with crops with PFAS because of this. And they're not actually on the ingredients list because they're inactive ingredients. So yes, looking at the ingredients list is good, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not there because these companies find ways to get around that. So just FYI.
Did you want to?
I think there's a queue.
No?
Okay, thanks. I know this is Nick Fletcher, Tampa Electric. I know University of Florida has been, in the past, worked with the DEP to come up with various limits for the surface water, things like that. Are you involved in any of that? Or do you have a feeling if the surface water limits for PFAS would be higher than the drinking water limit or not?
As far as I know right now, there are no limits for surface water for PFAS. I am not aware of anybody working on that. I know they're working on some limits for seafood intake, but that's in the very early stages and that's through the government. But nothing for surface water. And that's not uncommon. I don't think most states have that. And I would say in large part because most states don't have the data that they need to be able to figure out what the levels are that they need to be. Once this paper gets published and the state is available, hopefully this can be a kick in the pants to get something like that going.
Any other? Yes, sir.
So Dr. Bowden, this is David Brooksburg with Hillsborough County.
Have you utilized samples, surface water samples collected through the University of Florida's Lake Watch program?
When we first started this project, we reached out to Lake Watch and they were not super enthusiastic to participate with us. I don't know if they saw what we were doing as duplicative or if they just didn't, you know, they weren't focusing on PFAS at the time. But we are actually now more connected with Lake Watch now with a lot of the stuff they're doing more recently. So yeah, I mean, we reached out. There's nobody we won't work with because again, we want to be part of the solution in any way we can. But early on, we were not working with them, unfortunately.
There's no reason we can't be educating ourselves as to all the folks who are working on this, and maybe you can help us with this and keep in touch with us yourself as to your progress and your interactions with other folks so that we get a sense of how we can bring the right people together.
Absolutely. I mean, we have another paper that we're about ready to get published that looks at PFAS and coastal foam. So the foam that you might see on coastlines that accumulates. So PFAS, one of their properties are their surfactants. So they sit around the surface, and over time, when the waves come in, they forms this foam. And we found that the foam is 100 to 1,000 times more concentrated than the water with PFAS. So I know that there have been some reports out there that foam is harmless. Don't worry about it. We're actually finding that it's the opposite. So there's actually some interest in trying to use foam as a way to remove PFAS from water. We're developing some techniques for that, some kind of prototypes that we're trying to test out for that. But anyways, yeah, so anytime we have new findings, I'd be happy to, I guess I could send them to Alina, I guess. And you know, you can share with the group. And again, I'd be happy to speak anytime on any issue regarding PFAS. And we also do other things too. So we also look for drugs abuse and pharmaceuticals. We look at other emerging contaminants. So, you know, PFAS just seems right now to be the hot topic. But we look for other things too.
And I believe you had a question.
Yeah, just kind of circle around to the conversation I think that Phil and you were starting in terms of what do we do about it other than not use these chemicals in some of the products and materials that we consume as a society. But I know there's a number of lawsuits pending, and there's some initial settlements that are being issued that will allow resources to flow to the states. And from what I've seen from some of the initial settlements, it's not nearly enough to tackle the issue with a lot of our wastewater treatment plants like we've been talking about. But has there been any indication, or do you know of how those resources are being utilized that are flowing to some of the states? Are they being directed towards sort of these needed infrastructure improvements? And if so, I think that's sort of an area where this committee should sort of take a stance on, especially if settlement money comes to the state of Florida, making sure that money is directed in the appropriate manner to actually address the issue.
Yeah, I know there's a lawsuit in Stewart. Most of the lawsuits are directed towards drinking water. I know there's probably going to be one that's going to come out of Brevard because there's a lot of like kind of rare cancer cluster in that area that they've started to link with PFAS. But I don't really get into the lawsuit stuff too much. But I will say though that there has been a lot of money allocated in the state of Florida for PFAS. I've reached out to FDP several times to get a sense of where that money is going, and I don't think that they know yet. But what I would surmise is that they're going to use that money for those communities that are most impacted for PFAS to help them increase or improve their infrastructure for drinking water, since that's going to be within 5 years, the first major enforcement of PFAS. And I imagine if, you know, substantial reports show that the environment around certain areas are very contaminated, I imagine that would be another potential way to get funding from the state. they've been very hush hush about what they're doing with that money. And I keep hoping that they'll give it to some academic institutions, but from what I've heard, it's going to be only local county kind of government money that's coming out. So, but it's quite a bit. So I would certainly reach out to your FDEP representatives or the state representatives who work with PFAS. I'd be happy to provide some information about who those people are that I talk to. I don't know what the queue is or how you have to prove that you're in need of these funds, but in my opinion, everybody needs these funds because, you know, what may be true with the data I've collected today may not be true with the data that I might collect in a few months because, you know, there's new industries, there's new spills, there's Piney Point, you know, there's things that happen that change the landscape that you may be good now, might not be good later. So we found PFAS in the Piney Point effluent. And so that's data that hasn't come out yet, but so anyways, that there's always new things that are happening. And of course, there's also hurricanes that, you know, change the dynamic of where these things go with runoff, with, you know, debris. We did some sampling after the hurricane. It went through Charlotte, and we found huge quantities of foam in areas after the storm, and, you know, have no idea where that PFAS came from. So it could have been from a lot of different things. So, but yeah, that's what I know at the moment.
Okay, well, I know Alana will too, is we want to be apprised of what you're learning and how your research is going. Colleen, I think, did you have another question you wanted?
No, I just wanted to thank him and Alana for bringing this forward because it's such a critical topic. And I mean, I learned so much. Thank you today. I mean, it was scary when I've read it's in your pizza boxes, it's in your nail polish. It's in so many things we use on a daily basis. And I'm sure glad the USDA is in the room because they need to be part of this conversation with us as we move any kind of pieces forward. But I just wanted to thank you and Dr. Bowden for your work.
Well, thank you. I'm not really a popular person at parties, unfortunately, because people ask what I do. You know, I have to tell them. But I just want to point out one more thing before, I don't know if there's any more questions, but before we go, I want to make sure that you guys are aware that I want this to be a two-way street. So I really want to hear from any of you about concerns, ideas, things that you want tested or things that you want to investigate. You know, we kind of do these things kind of like what our interests are. And sometimes that aligns with the local community, sometimes it doesn't. So, you know, feel free to reach out to me with anything that you have concerns about that you want to work on. We're happy to listen and work with you.
The only thing that floated into my head, and I leaned over to Natasha and I said, when you said the propellants, the first thing I thought of is our mosquito control. Does they use anything in that?
I don't think anybody's looked at that before. I mean, I think most of the stuff that people looked at are like herbicides, insecticides, you know, that are kind of like the ones you buy from like Home Depot or Lowe's. I don't know like what the formulations are, but that's something we certainly could look at. I'd be very surprised if there wasn't PFAS in there. Let's put it that way.
I'm gonna ask this group if you have more questions that come to mind that you want to bring to him. Work with Alana because she kind of can get it all together and get back to you, Dr. Bowden. And certainly we will invite you back again to keep us updated on your research. Did you have a question to ask?
Dr. Bowden, are you looking, I know you're looking mostly now of kind of where, are you looking at kind of any research in breaking those bonds? Because I understand right now the treatment available is RO and GAC. And you know, I didn't know if there was any other thing that University of Florida was looking at as far as, because I understand they can be particularly complicated to break for removal processes.
Yeah, so there's two parts, right? There's the removal, and if you're thinking about a personal home, I would recommend reverse osmosis as the current best approach. In terms of you know, actually breaking them down, that's gonna be the million or $1 trillion or even more gazillion dollar thing. I think there's a lot of really good technologies out there, some that are being developed here, but most of them aren't to scale. So they work really well at the bench on small quantities, but they're not something that's scalable in terms of costs and energy use and things like that. So that's still an area that is lacking, unfortunately. But there's a lot of people working on it because it's going to be a very lucrative area.
And then ultimately, you know, what do you do with what you have? So.
I mean, one of the issues with a lot of the destruction techniques is that there's concern that the degradation products are actually more toxic than the originals. So, you know, technology is the first part, but then there's also a large consideration for the assessment of these techniques and actually whether or not they're actually making things better, because there's been a lot of historical incidences where people have tried to break things down and they end up making things worse. So that's like the phase 2 of this, and we're not even through phase 1 yet. So, but there's plenty of great people working on this. We need more funding. We need more people. We need more interest, more people aware of the issue to really push this home.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else?
I would love to get sort of a read of the room. Are these conversations you'd like to continue? Like in PFAS, should I bring this to a future agenda? I can bring in Dr. Borowski, get some sort of more local context, what they're finding. Yes. Okay, that's great. So I will make sure that our future agendas also include this as a continuing discussion.
So you're all a glutton for punishment.
Might want to reach out to DEP and the manager of who's ever managing the money that's going down to the local communities to find out what their criteria are and what their opportunities are for our local community.
Melissa, do you have any insight in that? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, I mean, all aspects of the department and all the different programs and the way that we regulate it, they're all obviously attuned to what's going on. I mean, I personally work in solid waste. Everything you throw away, every PFAS that you get rid of, it ends up in my arena. So, you know, every different program, and I think the Hinckley Center, you know, funds a lot of research. And so it depends on what aspect you're looking at. And I think that that's the one issue in DEP. We cover so many different aspects that there are so many points of contact to reach out to. So I think that, you know, certainly our communications folks would be the appropriate contact and going through that channel. So I can put you in contact with the press secretary and they can make
That
those
would be great. Maybe
connections.
at the next meeting, we can plan on having you guys discuss more about what pathways exist in regards to research.
Yeah, and it's so
funding, everything
new,
else.
the regulation of it, I mean, it's so new, that, you know, it may take some time to provide feedback.
Right.
Okay, thank you again, Dr. Bowden. And you can tell by the interest in the room, we'll be talking to you some more.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and please stay in touch.
I'm going to start and go around the room and let everyone just have a minute or two, because we don't have too much time left, but I want to make sure that if there's some announcements you want to make about your organization, if you want to alert us to something, or just say what you're doing at this point in time. That's why we have such a broad selection of folks that have been designated for this group, because we want us all working together. I want to start with Mark. No, actually, I should start with Gillian. Yeah.
Well, I
You
can
can
cover,
introduce Gillian.
I can cover both. So me
All
and
right,
Jill.
for both,
Yeah.
then we'll go to Mark.
Okay, so one thing I do want to make everyone aware of, and we have flyers over there next to the agendas, is right now we have this stormwater education funding opportunity that's open for Pinellas, Hillsborough, and Pasco County. Please apply. We can fund any stormwater related materials. It doesn't cover staff time, but if you want to hand out flyers or even pay for people to attend certain events, like all of that is covered by this grant. So the limit is 15,000. Please, I'd love for this to be more competitive, so apply. There's a really good chance you'll get funding. Applications are due in July. The date's on there. You can send your application to me. It's very simple. It might take you an hour or two to fill out. But we've had a lot of our municipalities apply and get, truck wraps or storm drain markers, or, I mean, you name it, even like games to bring to tabling events, all kinds of stuff. So stormwater education is really important to us. And that's a grant that we administer on behalf of FDOT. So please apply. And if you want more information, either contact me or there's flyers over there. Thanks, Mark.
Mark?
No significant update since the last report out, but just continuing to help conserve our aquatic resources in Tampa Bay and along the Florida Gulf Coast.
Okay,
Thank you.
Kevin?
I don't have anything to add.
Yes?
I'll defer to Amy.
Excellent. Yes, sir.
Nothing much here, just, we're on schedule to plant another 3 to 4 million, restoration clams in the next year, another 6 million in 3 years. So trying to keep it going, and this seems like every time I have one of these meetings that it's always more bad news as far as the waterways. So wish one meeting would go the right way, not the wrong way.
Okay, lady back there, yes. Anything?
I'm with Tampa Audubon. I just want to say regarding Dr. Bowen, I was one of the ones that went out and collected water samples for him, and he had some very, very specific protocols for how we had to collect. Probably the big thing that Tampa Audubon is working on recently is some of you are aware of what USF is proposing and talking about doing to the old golf course. It abuts the USF Forest Preserve. About half of it is in floodplain. I've gone to meetings, we've sent letters, and they're still proposing to create a new water street. Residential housing, conference centers, restaurants, I forget what all. And they want to expand the Judy Genshaft Drive, which goes through main campus now across Fletcher and right up into the middle of those beautiful old oak groves. And I helped with a 6 months bird survey out there. So there's a lot of birds that we know use that area. So it's still pending and we're still arguing, but at least they withdrew the latest rezoning application. So we're not sure what they're intending yet, but the trustees are still wanting to create a new water street.
Okay.
As far as NRCS, our programs run through fiscal years. So my only announcement would be, if you know of any way I can share the word with y'all. Again, I'm specifically right now in Hillsborough and Pinellas counties. So if there's any way I can spread this information or y'all can help me spread the information to farmers in your community, I'd be happy to do so. The sign up usually ends by the end of the fiscal year. And the way the applications work for our program, you apply at the end of the fiscal year, and by this time of year of the following year, we find out who's been pre-approved for funding and create contracts for them. So it's really important to sign up before that fiscal year deadline. We don't have a deadline right now, but I always encourage before September 31st.
I want to suggest that if you're involved in anything, any significance like that, please let Alana know, because we're going to put as much on our website for general information so we can continue to communicate. Did you have something, ma'am, you wanna? No, you.
Oh, me, yes. I was just gonna say thank you all. I don't know if we helped get the word out, but I think we did. We had over 300 people attend our open house, very successful, and just I think that just shows that there's a lot of public interest in what we do collectively. I also wanted to offer, a lot of the questions that we get about public records and access to public records is, offering training. And so we're trying to do better about that because again, with so many programs and so many different ways to access those, just if your organization needs access to those, let us know and we can provide training. And we're really trying to make sure that it's clear that that information is out there. It's just sometimes hard to
Come to,
navigate.
please say your name so we can have it on the record as well, sir.
Yeah, Phil Compton with Friends of the Hillsborough River and Tampa Bay Sierra Club. SwiftMud is hosting the 5th stakeholders meeting next month. We're looking forward to that on the assessment of the recovery strategy for the lower Hillsborough River with the minimum flow, which was something that started about 17 years ago. We're really looking forward to seeing that. There's new data, including from my own personal dot below the Hannah's Whirl area, which is below where the freshwater zone has stopped. So we're looking forward to seeing how good a job the minimum flow has done. And then perhaps in the future, reassessing maybe that it needs to be tweaked a little bit to improve the habitat that we have restored. It's done a lot of good over the last 17 years. Could it do better?
All right.
Jay Leveroni with the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program. I'd just like to announce next Tuesday, actually, we are hosting, and I want to thank Megan Berry from our program who kind of got this concept together, to host all 4 Florida estuary programs in Sarasota next Tuesday. Estuary programs are unique. They're not all cookie cutter organizations, both their governmental structure, their staffing, their priorities. We all have CCMP. So we're getting together, Ed will be down with his team, and just to find out how we do things and find out what emerging issues that we're dealing with. And I think from that one-day event that there may be some things that emerge that might be relative to this agency. So it's a good opportunity to work with our other estuary programs. Indian River, a lot different than those on the West Coast. So I think we're looking forward to seeing what we can glean from everybody collectively.
We'll be interested in hearing about that. What you come up with. Yes, sir.
This is George Henderson. I don't know if you did. David Glicksberg now. Have anything? No.
Hi, Chris Pratt with the Environmental Protection Commission in Hillsborough County. I work in the water division, so there's a lot of stuff going on from divisions that I'm not aware of. Just from our perspective, we're gearing up for the annual benthic collection that we do every year and the seagrass survey with the estuary program. And we did go out 2 weeks ago for the Great Goliath Grouper count and got the dive down at Egmont. We didn't see any Goliaths. We actually hit Port Manatee, going to Lockwood Reef on the way back in too. We had time and didn't see any there either. I see Angela's got her hand up right now. Oh, she's clapping. But yeah, it was a good dive. It was interesting to get there. We got some good footage, so that'll be posted on our YouTube page here pretty soon. Some of the stuff we get. So.
Ed Truitt, Tampa Bay Estuary Program. A couple of things. If you're not aware, our Bay Mini Grant Program is currently open and accepting proposals through September 13th. If you're unaware of what the Bay Mini Grant Program is, it's a small community-based grant that's available to similar associations, community-based groups that helps implement the priorities of our CCMP. So if you're interested in submitting a proposal, we have a webinar August 1st, kind of outlining what makes a competitive proposal to that grant program. So look forward to getting a lot of proposals to that Bay Mini Grant Program this summer. On the note of the Habitat Restoration Committee that was through the Agency on Bay and Coastal Management, our Habitat Restoration Consortium, which has kind of taken its place and kind of forwarding recommendations to this body, is set to meet on August 21st, and we meet quarterly through that Habitat Restoration Consortium. And again, I think it's aligning a lot with what the Habitat Restoration Committee has done in the past, and any permit related sort of inquiries or actions would be forwarded on to this committee if they occur during that consortium. And last but not least, I just want to recognize Dr. J, as I like to affectionately call him, because he is retiring here shortly. He's been a great collaborator, researcher, and communicator of science for quite some time in our region, and He's been, you know, a great advisor to me as I was the program scientist at the Tampa Bay Estuary program before I became the director. And I've always loved to hear his perspective on things and his wisdom. So sad to see him go, but I know he'll be sticking around and commenting as a citizen, hopefully in the future.
Thanks, Ed. I appreciate that. And I know several folks in this room, and it has been a pleasure. And Paul, Mark, and others, you know, it's been even George going back a few years, and Chris. So thank you all for the opportunity to fill some pretty big shoes of Dave Tomasco when he comes. So anyway, it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
We appreciate your participation,
Thank you.
your being here. Thanks, Ed.
That's all.
Sinead Borchard, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but I am the liaison to McDill Air Force Base, so this is for McDill. We were invited to submit a full proposal for the National Coastal Resilience Fund money to fund site assessment and design beneficial use of dredge material projects from the shipping channel. What we want to do is have a structured decision-making workshop where we get people who are reviewing these projects and have most opinions about them to help us rank projects would be good and which would be bad. So I just wanted to say we'll be reaching out to some of you, but if you know of people who would be interested in attending that SDM workshop, feel free to reach out to me. I can give you my card. But yeah.
And we'll be sure, all of you that are having things coming up to let Alana know, so that if it's a meeting or proposal or request for information or whatever, Alana can take it, and we can give you further publicity. And did you have anything you wanted?
I do. The Tampa Bay Aquatic Preserves and Clearwater Historical Society are jointly putting on a Living Waters exhibit, which is Clyde Butcher's prints at the Historical Society meeting, and that will run through July 27th. So that's available for the public to go to. And I think, you know, I love Clyde Butcher, and I think we all really appreciate his insight into how special the aquatic preserves are. And this is a focus on the aquatic preserves through his photography. And indeed, the Aquatic Preserves Program is celebrating its 55th anniversary on July 20th. So more information will be about that if you want to look up at the Tampa Bay Aquatic Preserves website, I guess. That's something that DEP will, I'm sure, will focus on letting people know about. Also, the Florida Birding and Nature Festival, as you know, is going to happen in October. We've got some flyers over here, and this is something that's being supported by many of the agencies and different people in this community. And it's a way for us to celebrate the natural areas that are so important, not just for the wildlife, but for us humans. So just let's know about that. Thank you.
And to me, one of the most important people in the room sitting next to you, Vicki
Thank you,
Parsons.
Barbara.
She is the editor of Bay Soundings, and I know she would welcome information from any of you about some of the projects you're doing, because we're always trying to keep everybody updated as to what's going on. And Vicki, do you have anything you want to say?
I do, as a matter of fact. I intended to get on the phone with Dr. Bowden and do a more complicated story, and I have decided he needs a road trip. So if anybody would like to drive to Gainesville with me, please let me know. Yeah, the science on that is too complicated and too important for me to try and translate through a telephone call.
Good.
Alyssa Powers, Manatee County Natural Resources. I have a couple of small items. Last time I reported that our board voted to pursue a purchase of Emerson Preserve expansion parcel. That is still in the works, and we're looking to close on that in July. So, you know, always slow going when dealing with all the paperwork associated with buying something, but it is proceeding. Also, since the last time, we, social media wise, we keep pushing more social media out of Manatee County, and there's an informational YouTube video on oyster beds in Manatee County that our Ecological Resources Division has posted in April. So if anybody wants to search on that, just oyster beds in Manatee County, it's really short. But we're working towards restoring some of those. And then I wanted to put in a plug for Keep Manatee Beautiful, one of our partners that does a lot of good work for us in the bays, and they have a full summer. They just sent us the newsletter on that, and there's a seal planting event in Holmes Beach, June 29th. The first Saturday cleanup event, July 6th at Boyd Bridge, Terracea. And then in August, the Perico Bayou, Palmasola Bay, they're having a water-based cleanup event. So they are not taking the summer off. They're working hard on helping us keep our waterways clean, and we appreciate that.
I have a question for you, Alyssa. Do you have an update on Rattlesnake Key and what's been on there? Just, is anything moving?
It's very slow moving. It's on the back burner right now, I believe, with the complications with the different agencies. So.
I believe the state funding will run out June 30th, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, may I ask, can you elaborate a bit on Rattlesnake Key? I'm not familiar with, is there a project proposed down there? Where?
It's, well, I'm probably not the best qualified to describe this, but it's for sale. It has private owners, and from my understanding that the sale price that they listed is higher than the appraised price, and so I guess for the state, the funding, we need more funding to meet that, right? Or there's some, like the state
Or
would
another
fund it
appraisal.
that.
Or another appraisal. Yeah, and the county has, we follow all of the state funding protocols, so, you know, if it's higher than appraisal value, we really also can't
Can't do it.
fund it. You know, we've had successful funding partners, you know, NOAA's reached out, and I think that's 5 million towards Crooked River, that they're gonna be reimbursing us. I mean, we work with funding partners all the time and keep trying to work on making Rattlesnake Key happen, but no.
Good to know,
Okay.
thank you. Highly ecological, important area down there.
Yes.
Amy Butler, Tampa Electric Company. I guess I'll just update you. We've had a couple of multi-year projects. One of which is the dismantlement project at Big Bend. So you can probably notice if you've been out at Apollo Beach, the skyline has changed quite a bit from the way it used to look. The second project, which will be coming online soon, is our fish-friendly screens and fish return project out at Bayside Power Station. And I think that the fish return is set to go into service before our next meeting, likely, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a 2-year project. We did unit 1 last year, unit 2 this year. And that means that all of our coastal units that are once through cooling water will have fish-friendly screens and a fish return. So.
Okay, sir.
Grant Bartlett, Tampa Bay Water. I certainly do have a couple things to add, especially based on the PFAS that we just discussed. So we can be a great resource for you. We have a bunch of, or several scientists, one in particular, Dr. Fleischacker, who's working really hard on this and his research. I'm sure he'd be happy to come and do a presentation for us here. And to be able to answer your questions that I'm sure you guys will have a little bit more in depth. Dr. Bowden was obviously great, but PFAS as it pertains to drinking water and what Tampa Bay Water is doing. We've been testing, started back in January 2023. In addition to our member governments, our 6 member governments, we've been testing for 29 PFAS, including the 6 that are currently regulated at the 4 parts per trillion. And just to give you perspective on how much, 1 part per trillion is, that is 1 drop in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools, or 1 second in 30,000 years. We currently have just finished our 4th quarter round of testing, so our final quarter, and are analyzing our results as well as treatment options to see what's effective, and plan to submit a recommendation to our board by the end of the year. As far as any points of connection that were over. We had one location that was slightly over the 4 parts per trillion. And so we're looking at the different ways that we could be able to treat that. You know, the bottom line is Tampa Bay Water is certainly going to be in compliance with the EPA's new rules when that is implemented at the end of that 5-year period. So the other thing I would say, we also have a great fact sheet on our website pertaining to PFAS that kind of breaks it down. I think you were talking about the latest term, which is certainly the way I like to digest things as well. And we have a really great fact sheet on there that you can print out or just review.
What's the scientist's surname? Scientist's surname?
Steve Fleischacker.
Fly.
Yeah, it's I'll get it for you. No, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
not.
if you don't mind sending that to me as well, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I can
Okay, let's hear from.
I'm Megan Blanchard with Tampa Bay Regional Council. I would just add that I'm trying to run up a stormwater infrastructure work group. So if anybody knows anyone or is interested in doing that, I would love to get your contact and get you started on. Oh, you're on my list, actually.
No. Not me, but I have some. Natasha DeCrow with Pinellas County. I just have 3 good news things, hopefully, to share. Recently, if you haven't heard, we now currently hold the highest CRS rating, which is the community rating system for insurance and floodplain management in the state, which helps save unincorporated Pinellas County residents money on their flood insurance. And it's also a nice feather in our cap because we're implementing policy and practices to strengthen our resiliency. And also one of our focuses is on land acquisition with repetitive loss areas. So we have grant funding. We're trying to do all that through grant funding. So I'm actually working on that with Restore. Our second thing is hurricane prep is a big focus. We're trying to make it more efficient and making more of a year-round activity and thought versus just right during this time period. So we're shifting some stuff to solid waste, sandbagging and whatnot, really vamping up education and notifications countywide, working with our planning partners. And then as far as like the environmental focus, because that's where I live, living shorelines is one of our big priorities. So doing either shore seawall enhancements or projects. We're working on a multi-year implementation plan with Restore to kind of focus on some living shoreline programmatic opportunities. We've had some really great engagement and almost a cult following for our living shoreline volunteer opportunities in Felipe Park and Old Tampa Bay. So we've installed over the last 1.5 years oyster reefs and partnered with academic institutions to do wave attenuation. So it's kind of a nice focus area for us. And recently we've been experimenting with volcanoes, oyster volcanoes. So again, a lot of engagement from community volunteer groups that are coming out, learning about living shorelines, the importance of habitat and whatnot and the link to water quality. So.
Okay, Michelle.
Michelle Centera with Florida Fish and Wildlife. Amelia and I work a small subsection called Conservation Planning Services. And our agency put out like a day in the life videos and our landowner assistance program. They help with private lands and habitat restoration on private lands. So they work a lot with NRCS and some of the acronyms throughout sounds familiar to us. So and then also in the very early discussions, talks, starting to look at Sulphur Springs, I think it is. And I think Katie's reached out to you. So that might be a little bit more conversation coming up, looking at it for manatee habitat restoration, since they're using it. And, not that in an area, I guess. So they're trying to look
We're
at that.
doing this. Aware of what every individual's doing. I'm not quite sure how on the line, but we do want to know what each of you is concerned about, so we get to cooperate wherever we can. Amelia, what do you want to share?
Just.
You're just.
Same
with-
Yep. And I'll get the Silver Springs on another agenda. I think they want to come to us and just hear everyone's perspectives about Sulphur Springs, and if they were to do a restoration project, you know, what should they be taking into consideration? So.
Mark, you have something?
Mark Rochelle with Audubon, Florida. You know, we are, been years long, permitting process for constructing some breakwaters as part of, some National Fish and Wildlife Foundation funding. We're finally gonna hopefully get a couple of those projects in the ground or in the water, within the next couple months, at Dunedin, Indian Rocks and, Dogleg Key, some important bird islands and in the intercoastal there, and then hopefully, Manatee County Island, which, as an aside, which was donated to Audubon Florida, or Florida Audubon Society a few months ago. As part of this process, it was owned by the Carlton Arms apartment complex and had some back and forth, so it was donated to Florida Audubon Society. So we're happy to have that as a property, because it is a critical wildlife area. Yeah, Dogleg Key is one of the islands.
Oh, cool. That is the island I'm right behind your home.
Yeah, so it's in, owned by Pinellas County. We have an agreement with Pinellas County and working with those folks, staff there to get that done. So we're hoping to get that done soon. In addition, we have a couple anniversaries. My office, FCIS, it's our 90-year anniversary. We're kind of gonna combine it with next year is the 125-year anniversary for Florida. So we'll have those kind of celebrations coming up within the next year or so.
Good. Keep us plugged in on that. And again, with these states, we should give them so that we can include them on our public announcements. Now online, is there anyone who would like to announce something to us that we should be aware of? I'm gonna ask Alana, since she's got the computer. Tell me who wishes to be identified. Anybody?
Justin, do you want to speak up?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Tampa Bay Waterkeepers working with Tampa Bay Estuary Program and Power Pole and a business called Skinny Water Culture and Oceanade 360 to host. We haven't announced it yet, so you guys are getting the first announcement, but we're gonna host the second annual Tampa Bay Debris Derby on October 5th. It's kind of like a really fun trash collection event that's it kind of looks like a fishing tournament. So it's a lot of fun. Wanted to just let you guys know it's October 5th. Last year, a team from NOAA actually won it. They collected 657 pounds of trash. So it's this really cool, like competitive event. And I'd love for, folks that are a part of this call to be a part of it. So I think we're going to announce it in July to the public, but you guys know the date, so put it on your calendar. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else online? I see Heather, Angela, Aubrey. Any of you would like to speak up?
Any of y'all who wish to be recognized?
Angela.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me okay? Okay, yeah, I'll just give a quick update for Florida Sea Grant. A couple things that I think the group might be interested in, other than the Great Goliath Grouper Count, which is happening right now. Thanks for that shout out a few minutes ago. That is happening. If you're a diver and you don't know about it, definitely contact us. But I did want to let everyone know that Florida Sea Grant produces something called the Florida Friendly Angler, which is an online free educational course for anglers, which we've had for years, but we just recently released one in Spanish, the Florida Friendly Angler en Español. And it's, again, free online self-paced learning module for best practices and regulations and general coastal stewardship. So we're just trying to get the word out about that to our Hispanic audiences. And we continue to work with our shellfish aquaculture community, both on the commercial production side, as well as on restoration projects. We're working with the Southwest Florida Shellfish Association in Charlotte Harbor. But I think it's interesting for the benefit of this group because we did get SOAR funding to look at submerged aquatic vegetation recovery in areas next to some of the shellfish restoration sites in Charlotte Harbor, and we'll be using the Eyes on Seagrass methodology that's in place in several of the estuaries already. The results from that work will be forthcoming. And then I just wanted to remind the group that Sea Grant does have different student opportunities, including something called the Harvest Internship, which supports student interns to work with commercial aquaculture businesses. We recently funded 2 of those interns to work in our Tampa Bay estuary with one of the commercial hatcheries and then with one of the oyster farms. And this is a great workforce development program for college students who are interested in aquaculture or pursuing careers in that realm, working waterfront type careers. And I did want to second Ed Sherwood's sentiment on and express some gratitude for Jay Leveroni, who is retiring, and he's served on the Florida Sea Grant Advisory Committee for decades. And I did want to just bring up that he was really integral in the process of restoration at the Fish Preserve in Cortez. And if you haven't been out there to see that restoration site in Cortez, it really is quite a testament to the community, the Florida Institute for Saltwater Heritage that purchased that land, and also to the estuary program for all the work that they did to get the funding in place to help restore that piece of property. So if you haven't been out to the Fish Preserve in Cortez, I highly recommend you check it out. And I think that's all we have for now.
Would anyone be interested in a field trip at some point?
Look into that.
We just had a meeting for our stormwater education committee. We did a field trip and a lot of people showed up. It was really successful. Everyone said that they loved it. So just an idea for this group.
I'll welcome you to come see fish. It's really nice.
Anybody else?
Great seafood, right next door too.
Well, you can study and do research, but it's not bad if you combine them with that on the farm.
That's why I switched to studying shellfish about 20 years ago, because I was hungry.
Keeps you young.
Aubrey online.
Hey.
Sure.
Yeah, I just had a real quick update on the feasibility study for the Tampa Harbor deepening. I just wanted to give everybody a quick update that we are getting ready to sign our chief's report, hopefully in mid-August. So that'll be complete. And then after that is when we would publish the EIS in the Federal Register. So that's where we are with that, hopefully wrapping it up pretty soon, and then they'll be moving into the engineering and construction phase for that project.
Anyone else wish to update us on something?
Doesn't look like it.
No. Okay. Bay soundings, do you have anything you want to say special? I think we've got lots of ideas about articles today. I think we could probably have an encyclopedia. Couldn't we? They could. Any topic ideas that any of you want to suggest for the next meeting or some upcoming meetings? Be sure to let Alana know so that we can work this out in our schedule. Our next 2 meetings this year, official meetings anyway, are September, and it's the 12th. Yeah, September 12th and December also. And then the committees that we have, the 2 committees will meet periodically as needed. And if any of you wish to join, I think that you'll publicize that. So anybody that would like to come, then you're welcome to come. Is there anything else that needs to be brought before us this time? I personally want to thank you all for coming and for putting your wonderful ideas in front of us. We appreciate you so very much. And we will see you in September. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. If you haven't already, please make sure you sign in at the front. We'll see you in minutes and tracking.
Let's go.